I think we're going to start with the Saiten versus Matt Dillahunty debate. So,
Okay.
so what's people's thoughts on that?
What do you want me to start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I think Matt seriously kicked Saiten's ass. I think it was fairly obvious when he, as I said, he wrote his rebuttal ahead of time and merely read it verbatim to show that he knew exactly what Saiten was going to say. I mean, that was a fairly impressive debate tactic, and I'd never seen that actually done before. So kudos to him. And I think it was fairly clear that Saiten was extremely uncomfortable with certain things that Matt countered with, and didn't know actually how to rebut them. I mean, it was fairly clear, to me at least, that he pretty much shut up at times when after Matt shot back a few things, and that was that.
And the question I asked at some point, some other times, was that did Matt make any sort of mistakes at all? Because it seems to be that people just say that it was a complete wipeout. But was there anything that Matt could have done better?
Honestly, I don't think so. I mean, the whole argument. There is one issue that I wanted him to address. The one thing I did want him to say that he didn't say, but I don't think I've ever heard anybody really say this before anyway. So, the whole idea of presupposition that you're denying, God and you deny Him, regardless of what you say, really does piss me off. That it's an insult. It's calling me a liar. And I don't appreciate it. And in fact, I normally, if Saiten would ask me to debate, maybe I'd say yes, but I would tell him I don't normally debate with people who say that about me. People insult me just as part of their world philosophy. It's bad enough that they think that we're bad people and going to hell, but to say not only that, but that what we say, that our entire fundamental thing that we say. In their philosophy means we're liars is just absolutely wrong, and so I would have liked him to address that issue about presuppositionalism, but he had other things to address. So I'm not saying that I'm not sure if he would have had the time, frankly, because he had a lot of other things to counter. But I would like somebody to say that to Saiten, that he's an insulting prick for just assuming that, and I think it's absolutely just dead wrong. It's something that I don't wish to tolerate.
Well, if we actually did believe in God but we hated Him, I think it doesn't really matter because we could justify hating Him because He's.
Yeah, but that's not the point. I say that I don't believe in God. Now I take people at their people's word, and I don't go around usually saying to somebody, well, you're not really a Christian, because I don't think that you really believe in Christ. Okay, I take people at their word. The least they could do is do the same for me, unless they're shown to be liars. I mean, I think Ray Comfort is a liar, and I'll say that openly. I think that because it's demonstrable. He's had evolution explained to him so many times by so many experts, and he still goes around saying, "I don't understand it," or "Nobody has explained this to me well enough." I mean, he's clearly lying. That's not the truth. So unless you can demonstrate that an atheist actually believes in God and they're just lying about it, then you shouldn't just go around saying that they do believe in God. It's that in itself is a lie.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that. But it's just that you may get offended by it. I don't, because there was some time about a year ago when I did believe in God. I did at the first I did start to hate Him actually, And now I am at a point where I'm not sure if he really does exist, but if I did believe it, I would still hate him. So I don't become offended by them saying that I still believe in God, because I can still make an argument that I have a right to hate him.
No, I'm offended. I'm offended because their entire philosophy, it hangs on the fact that they call me a liar, and that is really something offensive. I mean, what have I said? Well, you know what? My entire philosophy is that you're a rapist, and I'm sorry if you don't agree, but I think you just are. Okay, you go around raping women. How are you gonna feel about that? Are you gonna feel that, well, that's not offensive because it's their philosophy or something? Or are you gonna say, you know what, that's a really prick thing to say. How dare you call me a rapist? That's really insulting, frankly. And I put liar up on the same level. I think most people do. So yeah, that's offensive to me, frankly. I mean, it should be to everybody, to every decent person, to have them be called a liar just out of the blue, just because this person's religious philosophy says that they are. That's just it's blatantly immoral.
When you say it like that, I actually agree with you. You should be what do you call it?
Offended.
No, it was something else I wanted to say.
Okay. Don't let me put words in your
You
mouth.
should be innocent until proven.
Yes. Innocent until proven guilty, and I agree. And these people don't act that way in any way whatsoever. Simply, and it's worse than that, because it's not that they believe that you are a liar because of something you've actually done. They just believe that you're a liar because without that belief, their stupid philosophy won't make any sense. So to make sense out of their stupid worldview, they have to resort to calling you a liar, to offending you. That's how bad their philosophy is, and that to me is just indefensible. I wish Matt would have brought that up, but again, that would have taken time, and I think Matt had other things to fetch about with Saiten. So I think that he did an excellent job, and you can't address every single issue. And anyway, that's not really something that most people bring up in a presuppositional debate. It's something I want brought up in a presuppositional debate, but it isn't something that's burning on the platter for most people. Although I personally think it should be. That's all.
Since I haven't seen the debate, did Matt at any point fall into Saiten's little presuppositionalist trap? Could you be wrong about everything and all that?
No, I think he pretty much threw it all back in Sai's face, actually. I mean, yeah, he said, yeah, I could be wrong about this, I could be wrong about this, but so could you. And
what did he say to that?
Saiten said, brought up the two Kokwe, as he puts it, the argument, saying, well, it's a fallacy to say that, blah blah blah, which frankly it isn't. But I mean, that was basically he went through his regular shtick. Is all he did. He was not very impressive, and Matt kind of shut him up a few times. I mean, Sai basically just kind of shut his mouth and stared off to the side while Matt was talking a few times and answering, because I think Saiten was getting frustrated with not making any headway with Matt. I think it was clearly obvious in the body language. Maybe I am biased. I know that. But that doesn't mean that that isn't necessarily true. So.
From watching all the people who have debated Saiten, I don't think you're biased at all. As soon as people they don't buy into his bullshit, I once saw. You remember the time at the Magic Sandwich Show when Saiten and Eric Cohen were on, and Aaron he couldn't speak at all because he had a sore throat.
No, I didn't see that
You
one.
didn't see
I
that?
know it's been referenced many times, but
All
I
right.
don't actually watch it.
Everybody fell into the little trap, but then sometime afterwards, Aaron were on a different interview with him, and he didn't fall for any of his bullshit. And as soon as you don't do that, he doesn't have an argument. He has
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, that's the
Nothing at all.
thing. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree. But no, I haven't watched it. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me because that's pretty much what he did this time around as well. I'm sure he'll say no, that wasn't true. He had lots of things to say against it, whatever. But I somehow don't see it that way. What can I say?
I felt like hey guys, by the way.
Hey.
I felt like he was just basically getting his lines in for his cuts that he's going to make for the DVDs and stuff that he's going to make, that he's going to sell to his religious community. I've seen him. He does like different talks at a lot of different churches, and the churches take him and they like him, and he makes money from that. And the whole point of doing this for him was to, I think, get his lines out, state his arguments, occasionally gets a little bit of Matt sort of going and not being sure where the conversation was going, and then a bit of argy-bargy with the crowd, and he'll just cut it to his tastes, and I don't know.
Yeah,
That's what I think,
maybe he might just see it as some sort of money-making endeavor instead of a real debate anyway. So yeah, I agree.
One question I have is, what do you say to the people that say that you shouldn't debate someone so far below you in the food chain, as it were, in the sense that, for example, when Bill Nye debated Ken Ham in that debate, it actually did Ken Ham a lot of good. It got him a lot of publicity, and he's now able to build his arc. I mean, there's a case for not debating people that are so bad at knowing anything about how the world works.
Well, I want somebody else to answer first because I talk quite a bit. I know that, so.
I agree with that.
I just want to say I don't want to be accused again of going over the top. So
sorry, I don't agree with. Sorry, I didn't mean I agree with that you talk too much. I don't believe that.
That's okay. I was just
But yeah, I did agree with that. There's might be an element of that happening, Quantum, but yeah, I don't know. Kind of lost my train of thought there.
Then, I don't think it's a cost-benefit analysis. I mean, if the person that you're debating is desperate for publicity, like in the case of Ken Ham, maybe it's not a good idea. I mean, this Cy Tenner. I mean, I only knew this guy as being Kent Hovind's sidekick because this is the guy on Chris.
Yeah, I think he couldn't even debate really. I mean, he couldn't even formally debate. It's fair to say that wasn't a formal debate. You don't present a video cutout footage of the other person and then argue against them in like some sort of like stage play type scenario. I mean, no professional, no person with any esteem would ever debate in that fashion. I don't know why. I think in the case of Ken Ham it was fine because Ken Ham could formalize debate, and I think his arguments, for the most part, were shown to be shit. But Cy, I don't even think it's a waste of time with someone like that because it's just you're not going to get anything productive. I don't think.
Well, I do have something to say, but I want to finish first.
Yeah.
Oh, you're done? No, I agree with you. I just wanted to. Okay, I think that okay. First of all, when Bill Nye agreed to debate Ken Ham, a lot of people were going off on Bill Nye about it, and I actually was on the Magic Sandwich Show, and I defended Bill Nye and said that he's going to do much better than people think he's going to do. A lot of people were saying no, blah, blah, blah. Well, I feel very vindicated. I went on the next Magic Sandwich Show and I said I'm vindicated, along with DPR who agreed with me. So I was very proud about that. Thank you. Uh, I think that
Yeah.
by debating Ken Ham, Bill Nye actually did science a huge favor, because as that Christian Today poll showed, um, you know, 92% I think it was of Christians on that poll or on that website thought that Bill Nye
Vast
won the
majority,
debate. Yeah,
yeah.
so it was, you know, I think he did a great service by debating Ken Ham for exposing the idiocy uh, to a lot of people who may not have been aware. I mean, everybody's aware that there's a quote unquote debate in the Christian community about evolution versus creationism. Not that there is one in the scientific community, thank God. But that basically they may not have been aware of what creationists really are about. They hear about it, but they don't really hear from the likes of Bill Nye about this issue. And I think that he exposed a lot of people to the insanity of Ken Ham, and probably did, you know, people who believe in science, Christians too, a big favor by saying this is crazy. And he didn't defend atheism, which frankly wasn't his job. And I was very glad he didn't defend atheism. He didn't have to. That's not what he was there for. There are many Christians who believe in evolution, who believe in science. We know some here on YouTube, and there are allies in this respect. I mean, I don't regard them in any bad way whatsoever. They accept science, they accept evolution, they accept equality for people, gay people or whatever. Then I don't really have a fight with them, and I'm proud to call them allies. So yeah, I think he did a really good service for
To
our
that
science.
community, especially.
Yeah,
Educating
I think,
that community, for sure.
yeah, I think yeah, absolutely. So I was in favor of it. Normally I wouldn't be. I mean, I think that great. Ken Ham has had his debate. Now we can tell him to shut up. Um, but somebody had to do it, I think, and I'm glad he did. That's all, really.
Yeah, the Sai felt like a pastor of a church, really. I mean,
Yeah, it was, especially at the end.
he was preaching. He was preaching at the end. Yeah, he was preaching at the end to people. I thought it was incredibly brilliant as well. The lady who asked the question about the Bible, and then he gave her, some. Well, you're wrong about the Bible, because the Bible really says that Adam and Eve don't die; they die spiritually. And he grilled her about it, and she politely walked off. And the next gentleman had a question, and he started speaking about the Bible. And he goes, I don't do Bible studies with atheists.
Yeah,
And
I
she
know.
yells out from the crowd, and she's like, excuse me, what do you just call what you just did then
Yeah,
with
yeah,
me?
yeah.
He was
I
picking and
wanted to.
choosing his positions.
Yeah,
He's not very knowledgeable. He was only, slightly sounded, like he was making some sort of argument when he read what he'd already previously written, basically. What
yeah.
he's done 1,000 times before.
Well, I wanted to do the same thing to the same sort of thing to G-Man, and if ever side. Well, I've never spoken to G-Man, but when they go on about well, pull out your Bible, etc., and tell me what's in the Bible, or you can't talk about the Bible. I'd like to pull out my Tanakh in Hebrew and start reading in Hebrew and say, oh, I'm sorry, you don't read Hebrew? Well, clearly you're an ignorant fuckwit, and I don't, debate with ignorant fuckwits. And until you learn to speak Hebrew, you just can't comment on anything in the Old Testament with me. Sorry.
I've heard people respond to that type of thing, and they'll say, well, we have differing opinions.
Yeah, I'll tell
And
them
then
he was his inferior.
yeah, they'll say we have differing opinions, and they just won't talk about it. It's like, I mean, differing religions you don't see. I mean, they do debate between each other sometimes, but in the right setting. But I mean, for the most part, I think religious people stick with other religious people of that particular religious, demographic or
No,
not demographic, that particular religion, you know.
No, but
Um,
my answer
yeah.
to them would be, well, whatever you say that you think is in the Bible in the Old Testament is wrong. And until you can show
Yeah,
it
yeah,
to me in
yeah.
Hebrew, then you're wrong. And you can't prove it to me that you aren't wrong because you can't read the original. That would be my
See,
answer.
oh yeah, but see, then they don't understand why you don't do what all other religious people do, or they can tell you're not a religious
I'm
person
not. No,
because
I'm an
you don't
atheist.
jump on. Yeah, yeah, because you don't jump on the bandwagon of the proofs of a god,
Yeah.
which they sort of rally together in that way. It's like Muslim people are suddenly arguing in the same way Christians are, because they're trying to use those sorts of formulated presuppositionalist sort of arguments to try and justify. And it's like, hey, yeah, that's a good argument. Yeah, that's a good argument because they know that both of them can use that argument to get to their God.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
No, I mean, my overwhelming argument would be, I see no evidence, and you still haven't shown me any evidence. And nobody can show the evidence. It's never been done. And that's fairly clear. It's fairly clear when you look at the history of religion. Nobody's been able to prove, if somebody had, nobody would be arguing about it. Yeah, but
Yeah, if a gentleman, if there was a dude who rose from the dead, and people, I'm not even going to go down that road actually.
yeah. No, I mean, no, it's like this. Every single argument that they come up with is a philosophical one, because it's all they have. So
And it can only loosely get you to a potentially maybe something possibly is there, and it's not, and then they just always insert their God or their theology or...
Yeah, but what I'm saying is none of them have anything other than a stupid philosophical argument. And you can you can prove anything with philosophy. I mean, well, ideally. I mean, maybe Ozzy has something to say about that. That's different.
No,
But
I have something to say about that. You can't. I mean, things are weighted in. I mean, sure, just because you can create a philosophical argument doesn't mean it's considered to be. It's like writing a crappy scientific paper, really. I mean, it doesn't. It's not based on good good
evidence.
Evidence and the way it was come about. I mean, of course you can get to. There's all sorts of philosophical arguments. We're a brain. I mean, the philosophical simple one. It's like, oh, we're all brains in a vat. Well, we can't prove. I can prove we're all brains in a vat, but we generally conclude that we're not brains in a vat.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it still doesn't matter, even if we were brains in a jar. It doesn't matter because we still obey the same rules.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I understand. Yeah, but that's not. But do you hold that, Nikolai? Do you hold that you're a brain in a vat? Like, would you say, if you had to choose, if you're a brain in a vat or you're not a brain in a vat, you're something. There's another, possibility, like not a brain in a vat.
We're in the Matrix.
I mean, you're not going to go with brain in a vat. I wouldn't think.
No, but I still say, if I don't know, some say we could be a simulation, some say we don't actually. It still doesn't matter if we are actually.
He's right.
That's the
Yeah.
You're right. Absolutely right. I agree with you. It doesn't matter. You live according to the rules in which the world is in which you live.
It's the same. It's the same thing about free will. It doesn't matter if we don't have free will. What matters is that we feel we have free will. That's what matters. Otherwise, we would go insane.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Of course, everything would change if we found evidence that we were in a simulation.
Yeah, sure, but we would it wouldn't necessarily change our perception about the.
I don't know if I don't know if as much as what you think would change, just purely based on the knowledge. Like, if nothing else changed, like if everything was exactly as it is right now, and we just discovered that we were in a simulation, I'm not actually too sure. You might have some people, like nutjob people, going, "Oh, I'm gonna go and do something crazy. You know, we might have a number of people doing that, but I don't think that would be the vast majority of people. I think the vast majority of people just carry on and, yeah, I mean, what else do you do, sort of thing. I mean, it's still going to feel good to have something to eat. It's still going to feel good to pursue what you think are your goals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I mean, the thing I think would change it is if there would be to some way to interact with whatever's external to the simulation. Assuming that we are in a simulation, of course.
Well, then we get another funny question. If we were actually able to contact those people who have created the simulation that we live in, would we call those beings a god or what?
No.
But wouldn't they qualify as a god?
No.
Well, under certain...
Why not? Does it have to be
certain definitions? Maybe certain definitions, but...
No, it wouldn't for me. I mean, maybe for you, but it wouldn't for me.
Some people just say creator. Some people just say creator.
Sense. More in a deistic sense, I think.
No.
The Covenant Group would accept it. Put it that way.
No. I'll tell you why. Because the concept of God has been so banged on upon as being something omniscient and omnipotent, etc. And you know, it is likely that beings who created a simulation with us in it are not omnipotent or omniscient. They are just highly evolved beings.
Sure, but that would depend on because it is only in the monotheistic religions where God is omnipotent. If you take the Greek religions or Egyptian religions, the gods are not the most powerful beings in those universes. Actually.
Right, but I don't argue with but I don't argue with people who are who believe that you know.
Yeah, you're only talking about the definition of God, which is monotheistic. I mean, that God would omnipresent,
the one that is pertinent today is what I would say.
So it would. Yeah, I think you're missing each other. I think you're agreeing with each other. Well, you essentially agree with each other.
I know. It's just that I always try to act as the devil's advocate in these cases.
I appreciate
you do that pretty well.
I appreciate that, but I think that that would be just. Why not then, some extremely advanced aliens that land on Earth and, say, we can do all these things. We have a holodeck. We can, warp between the stars, etc. Why shouldn't we call them gods? I mean, they are clearly far more advanced than we will be in the next, few hundred years.
The technology seems like magic to us.
Yes, I mean, Star Trek is kind of, it's sci-fi, but there is an element of technology we won't see at least for another few hundred years. I mean, as far as we can tell. Imagine if you had aliens who came down and said, "Yeah, we can warp and we can time travel and we can, create planets with a single gesture or controls in our spaceship." Why shouldn't we call them gods at that point? What's the limit there that you'll say, well, that's a god and that's not a god? And I just don't. So my definition would not include just highly evolved beings.
I sort of agree with that. I think that the polytheistic definitions of God are significantly better than the monotheistic ones because.
Oh yeah, definitely. Those older religions are much better religions, actually.
But I mean, it's less incoherent. A monotheistic God, the actual idea of omnipotence is self-contradictory anyway. I mean, I would call a god anything that meets a certain criteria. One of those criteria is it would have to have absolute control over life and death, in the sense that it would be able to wipe any of us out really easily. It would have an ability that would look like magic to us, to all intents and purposes. I mean, they wouldn't have to be infinitely powerful, but just so much more powerful than ourselves that they can do things that appear to be magic.
And that is actually also why I think monotheism was created in the first place. It is likely that it was between two guys, and one said, "My God is so powerful, he can do this." My God is more powerful, he's infinitely powerful. And the only reason they've done that is so they can keep regressing him further and further the more we know about the Big Bang. It is always the same.
Well, I've said this many times. People who are biblical literalists are idiots because they do not understand anything about the people who created these gods. The societies in which they live. There's clear evidence that we know of. That
They're just.
Huh?
I think they're spending. I think their time and energy gets directed in the wrong direction. Because I know my local sort of church and stuff where I grew up in that. There's a family. One of my best friends is his parents are pastors, and his older sister has gone on to do youth ministry and all these sorts of things. She went to Bible college and all this sort of stuff. She's an intelligent person, very very intelligent, very bright. Plenty of great qualities about it, but like I think the evidence, like you're saying, is out there. I mean, we know, you know, if you look into it, it's just so hard to. You can't accept that it's, you know, the types of things that, you know, Christianity and they're trying to say, you know, about it, and it's just, it's like if only. So that's why I think, you know, if people in that, if we could get to people who are in faith in some way, like kind of like you were saying with Bill Nye, you know, against Ken Ham, you know, because there's a chance that someone like her might watch it because, you know, it's, you know, it seems like a Christian, you know, versus something else. But anyway,
no,
she's susceptible to good information, I think is my point. But yeah, anyway, go on.
No, what I wanted to say, and this is pertinent, it goes back to what I asked about defining what a god is, okay? And if you don't understand what these people, what their worldview is, I mean, I think most people truly don't understand. They espouse, and I'll explain. They espouse what the worldview is, but they don't truly understand it, okay? It didn't matter to these people.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, here's what I'm saying. It didn't matter to those people back then whether a god was a highly evolved being or an omnipotent presence. Okay, and the reason why is because they had. It's hard for us to understand. Sam Harris has brought this up a few times successfully, I think. It's hard for us to really understand just how ignorant, just how helpless these people were. There is nobody in the world today, not a single person, that is as ignorant about the world as these people were. They knew nothing. They didn't know the concept of germs. They didn't know the concept of electricity, of thunderclouds, of anything. Of the concept of manufacturing something was in a sense beyond them. In so many, you know, medicine, science, technology, what knew nothing about this. They were completely at the mercy of whatever they thought the higher powers were. Now, given that sort of a worldview, that context in which to put a belief in God, would any being, even an omnipotent one, be worthy of being called today by me a god? And my answer would be no. And the reason why is because I'm not beholden absolutely to every single whim of nature, in the same way that these people were. So nothing out there presupposes that I should worship them for them to save, you know, my family, my life, my house, my village, my town, whatever. Okay.
No, of course not.
So the concept of God is you worship something so it doesn't destroy you and everything that you love. Okay. Is anything like that out there today? Well, no. I would not give my worship to anything because I don't believe that that's a valid concept to live with in this century after all we know about the universe and the world. I'm not saying we know everything, but we know enough to know that this is a ridiculous concept. So actually, I would not...
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm done.
Actually, that reminds me about something when you said that about if a being as God did exist, he couldn't be the one from the Bible. There's just no way. He's just too evil. I actually talked to someone I know who is a believer, and I asked him, how do you know that the God that you pray to is actually not the devil that's fooling you? Maybe the God who says he's God is actually the devil. How do you know exactly that you are not being deceived by your own religion? and he didn't know what to say. That I think I actually ruined his worldview by saying that.
Yeah, but Saitan was asked that by Matt in the debate. Saitan had an answer, which was a bad answer, but he said, "I know it because it's been divinely revealed."
Yeah, I know that one.
You know.
But actually, quite recently, I have been studying the history of the Bible. And the funny thing is, the more you read about Satan, actually Satan is a far more belovable character than God is, and that is actually quite fucked up. I mean, he gets thrown out of heaven because he's a little bit jealous. That's the only reason. He thinks that angels are far more perfect than humans, and then he gets thrown out for that. That's the only reason. I mean, come on, seriously. He's not a villain.
Wasn't Satan in favour of democracy in some ways?
What?
Was Satan in favour of democracy?
You can sort of draw
I don't know actually. It was just it's what you know. I think it's John Milton, isn't it, who wrote Paradise Lost?
Yeah, Milton.
It has something to do that Lucifer and some of the other angels they didn't agree that they should bow down to humans. The first angel to bow to human was Michael, and there were about half of the angels didn't want to follow that. They were against it for some reason. And for that, God smite them to the ground, and they became what we know as demons and devils.
Yeah.
And it just seems, actually, to me, sometimes it could be that Satan is actually the hero.
Well, here's the thing. He could have been. We don't know what the intention was for in certain cases of these authors. You know, there are instances in other mythologies where the anti-hero is the hero.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And it could very well be that, you know, the person who wrote the Book of Job or wrote other stories such as that, they were poking fun at either the beliefs or the character of God, or it could very. I mean, it's. That's why it's so stupid to be a fundamentalist, because we don't know the intention of many of the authors of the Bible.
Yeah.
We don't know. They could have been referring to something local in many cases. I mean, you know, with the Book of Revelations, you know, it's suspected that he was talking about Nero, but we're not sure, but we think that might be the case. But people who take it literally are deluding themselves that this is you know, to be taken literally.
But the funny thing is, we actually do know some of the things in the Bible. For example, I think the story about Adam and Eve, a lot of theologians and archaeologists have actually proven now that there is, I think it's some ancient Sumerian text that talks about a Sumerian king who had 2 servants in his garden, and he threw them out because they ate some of his fruit. And when I watch that, and I sometimes use that as an argument to Christians, that is actually, you can just see it in their eyes. This is something that is very close to them. It's actually a pretty good argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about that specific one. I actually like that a lot because, I mean, I mean, if you start from the Adam and Eve, I mean, most Christians they know that's in the Bible, even if they haven't read the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
At least read that part.
A lot of the stories are just borrowed from other stories. Most of the stories borrowed from Babylonians or Sumerians. And sometimes also from the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, and also on the point of sort of talking against the grain. I mean, back then, you know, you get sort of hung or like killed if you were like caught putting something in writing that was like against, you know, the ideas at the time. That's why I've heard people arguing, you know, that some of the things that Jesus was saying were a lot more, you know. When he says things like keep the law and stuff like that, he's just sort of might be just saying that so he can get that sort of literature out out there, because he has to be careful the way he says things, because he might get killed, even though, well, in a sense he does. That's the story, but you know what I mean. There's that potential too. But yeah.
I think actually it depends upon the time that people were living in. I think it's pretty much certain that there were times where these rules were extremely lax, and there were times where they were extremely rigid. We know from archaeology here in Israel, I'm fond of pointing this out, that most houses have that we have dug up. I say we. I'm not actually an archaeologist, although I have been on several archaeological digs here. Um, we know that they had Canaanite gods well after this was a monotheistic society. Many, many, many houses had Canaanite gods, figurines that we have found, and we know we know from dating. So we know that the people here, although it was a quote-unquote monotheistic society, it truly wasn't necessarily a monotheistic society.
That's actually the same thing where, when you said that, I think one of the figurines they worshipped were a god named Baal, or Baal.
Oh, yes.
And then they distorted his name to Beelzebub.
Yes, and there's archaeological evidence that actually the people local here were a mix between many tribes, some of whom rebelled against their Canaanite masters, so they had been slaves who rebelled against their masters. Some possibly came from Egypt. A small tribe came from Egypt as wanderers and came with stories of their own, possibly bringing the idea of monotheism to this area. Because Tutankhaten was a monotheist in a sense. So he came up with the idea of monotheism before the Hebrews did, and that possibly came from a small tribe of people that came over the desert. And around the same time, you had, because of these rebellions, you had in the civil war of Canaanites, in a sense, a re-identification of these people into something else. So we see archaeological evidence of new towns, or I should say villages, in a much more egalitarian kind of setup, like a circular setup with common area, etc., which didn't exist before. So you have a lot of evidence that these people came from a pagan tradition and adopted these some new ideas, either from Egypt or from somewhere else. It was probably a melange of many influences, and I doubt at that time that they were literalists going around, essentially burning heretics at the stake for all intents and purposes. They were probably quite accommodating to listening to many stories and coming up with reformulating their own, which is frankly what every single other society we know of has done.
Yeah, also quite recently, like the Brother Grimm tales. We don't know where they came from, but look, they're only about, 100, 200 years old?
Yeah.
And we don't know the sources of those. They could have changed so much.
Yeah. So when...
And to say we know the sources of 2,000-year-old text, yeah.
I don't fault the people for believing back then, the ones who did believe. Again, they had nothing else they could do.
Oh, sure, yeah, of course not, yeah.
But the people today, I fault entirely. I just do. I just absolutely do.
Well, there is one thing you could...
I don't accept that. I mean, people are brought up, in their family home. They're not given any literature or any information about, science. They're told that, maybe that science is, a thing of the world, and if we pray to God, He's above everything, and you're brought up in that culture, and then you go to church, and you're involved in that sort of culture. Anytime you hear any sort of rebuttal to your side, you just immerse yourself in a sea of bullshittery that, covers it up. But they're people that you love and that you trust, and they all feel that way, and you can feel comfortable feeling that way too. I mean, unfortunately, there's so many people that don't get even this, the level of information or the level of, I don't know, people aren't driven to find the answers to some of these things as much as other people. I mean, some people don't even deal with these sorts of questions.
No,
So,
I'm talking about people online. I'm talking about people online. People like Rich Raspberry and G-Man and Saitan and
yeah.
Bible Thumping Wingnut and the rest of them and Jason Burns. These people have been exposed quite a lot. Okay.
Well, Jason Burns has
I know.
He's got some concerns, but
I've discussed his what I see as his mental issues. Sorry about the bus in the background. I've discussed about what I see as his mental issues in the past on the Magic Sandwich show. But okay, so he's not a good example, but others. I think that their position at this point is not only untenable, but it's unforgivable. And I won't stand for it. I think it's absolutely atrocious that they stick to these stupid. I mean, G-Man and Veckel, validating slavery is ridiculous.
You have to. I know, but you can understand that you're not convinced by anything. I mean, you have to understand that some people aren't convinced by what we're saying. I mean, there's plenty of people that could listen to what I'm saying right now, what you're saying right now. We agree with each other. We think it's, ultimately correct, essentially. But there are going to be people that, their belief set is that they're not going to accept that. They might have a think about it over time, and some people might, after hearing us talk, might change their minds, perhaps. But most people, you can understand, though. I mean, it's not just because you present an argument to someone once and they don't accept it straight away. I know it's frustrating, and perhaps they're not ever going to address it. They're never going to address it properly. And some people like Ray Comfort, and Saitan, like I said, they're doing it for financial gain. But Jason Burns believes what he's saying, and look, good on him. He's welcome to say what he wants to say, and that's fair. And no one should be criticizing him and butchering him. Just let him have his channel and don't subscribe if you're not interested in listening to his discussion and argument. I mean, it's really simple. I mean, I don't understand why. I mean, I'm not afraid that he's going to convince anyone particularly.
No, that's not. I'm talking about
I'm interested in G-Man and yeah. Well, yeah, I understand, but I mean, I'm not even interested in them necessarily. I mean, I don't mind, as long as, I don't know quite what I'm saying there, but I just think that it's not necessary to sort of have to convert, say, G-Man or Bible Thumping Wingnut.
I don't want to convert them. I'm happy to let people believe in God. I don't really. No, it's not even. You know what? I don't even care if they keep it to themselves. It's more to the point. Somebody like Fiona, who is a Catholic, who believes in God, but she accepts evolution. She accepts, the age of the universe. She accepts science.
Yeah.
That to me, again, she's an ally, and I'm happy to call her an ally and hopefully a friend. I don't have a problem with that, and I would never really have an issue with something like that. I'm talking about people who basically, are idiots after being exposed to so many things that should frankly tell them that they are just absolutely wrong. That's where my real problem is.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. I see what you. Yeah.
Well, yeah, sure. I agree with you on that, but still, we will never get to the bottom of this problem as long as, for example, I can't speak for my own country because we are very secular, but for America, as long as you have all these religious symbols and quotes on your money and your capitals and everything, I don't think the problem will get better. It's still promoting it. It should purely be a private thing. Or at least your politicians shouldn't say anything about it. They shouldn't say, I believe in God and let's pray together. They shouldn't say that. Not at all.
I'm American, but I don't live in America right now. I live in Israel, so it's
Oh,
another deal entirely. Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, I agree with this point anyway. But
Which country are you from again, Nick?
oh, it's Denmark. So we are, I think we have a
Danish.
population about 68% of the population are atheists here.
Yeah.
But I was an anomaly. I used to be Christian.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the funny thing is that in all the countries where they have a state religion, they are actually the most secular countries nowadays. Take, for example, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, England. All of these countries far more secular than the United States. It's a funny thing, really.
Well, I lived and worked in France, and I grew up also in England and in Belgium. I speak French. I am French and American and Israeli. I have 3 passports, so I know Europe very, very well. And I agree with you completely, but it's not as if Europe doesn't have its own growing religious problem right
not
now.
at all. Not
Yeah.
at all. It gets to a problem when you get to. I'm not trying to insult these countries that I'm about to mention, but Spain, Italy, and Turkey, and a lot of Eastern Europe, they still are very religious. I think Romania is 98% belief in some sort of religion.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an accurate number actually, or something up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the more northern countries tend to be less religious.
Yeah, and the funny thing is they call us the spawn of the devil, but we are actually some of the happiest countries in the world.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so fun.
I have other issues with Sweden and Norway and right now, but it's not because of Christian fundamentalism. That's not.
I find out about Norway is that if you're Norwegian, then you're the only nationality that actually has a right to be a patriot, because on the Human Development Index, Norway consistently comes as #1. So numerically speaking, Norway is the best country to live in the world.
Yeah, but
I thought it was Sweden. I thought it was Sweden. I didn't know it was Norway. Why,
actually, do you know how expensive it is to live in Norway?
No.
It's insane. Actually, I think. Do you know how much a Danish crown is?
Not compared to the dollar, no.
Well, 1 Danish crown compared to the dollar is about 12, I think.
Oh wow! How many euros is it?
It's 1 Danish crown. No, sorry,
No.
it's the other way around. Sorry, $1 is equal to about 11 Danish crowns, and 1 euro is about equal to 7.25.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
And if we use that, well, here in Denmark, a pizza costs 4 Danish crowns. In Norway, you need to double it up 4 times. It's insane. For a frozen pizza, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's really insane.
That is crazy.
But the reason why they have that is because they have planned this future that they are supposed to. They have this massive bank operation where most of the money they get from the oil and from other things they store in this huge bank system, so they can be self-sustained for about 60 years in the future. They are already thinking about that, so that's why everything is so expensive. They're thinking about the future. They have so many money. It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have, like I said, I don't have an issue with Nordic states on the point of religion, really. I mean,
it's about the censorship.
I was interested.
It's about other things. I don't want to get into it right now.
Oh, okay. Because censorship is actually a big deal when it comes to the Islamic religion.
Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. But I don't want to talk about it right now because obviously that isn't what we were going to discuss. So.
Okay, we can talk about it another time.
Yeah.
I was just interested, Nicola, in your knowledge. Do you know if the progression to majority of atheists in the country, how did that come from? Do you think it came from the government's actions or from people's changing each other's minds, sort of in public discourse?
Actually, we are historically speaking, we are Protestants. And Denmark became, and first time Denmark became a Christian nation was around the year 500 when Harold Bluetooth, he made us Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since then, well, we have never really been fundamentalists. We have always separated. We have always thought it was a private matter, even though it stood in our law that we were a Christian nation. It has always been a second thing. We have always joked about religion. We never really taken it that seriously. We didn't have witch burnings in Denmark. I don't think we had, actually.
I see. Yeah.
It's all. I think it's just the mentality.
Deep, richly, cultural.
Yeah, I just think that is because everybody is a member of the church in my country, but they are purely doing that because they want to get married. It is a traditional thing, not a religious thing.
Yeah.
For example, well, some of the taxes do go to churches, but we don't really care about it. Actually, nobody cares about the church here anymore. It is dying. Actually, quite recently, we have an ethical council who is supposed to take care about all the research, if it is ethical research, and all the priests have recently been kicked out of the council now because they are still seen as they can contribute anything worthful.
Yeah. Our churches have had to just change, like, dramatically, and a lot of the suburban sort of small churches have been dying. Only the bigger churches have been able to survive, and they've been having to, like, sort of market themselves differently. There's a lot of, like, Hillsong United, which is a lot of rock music and that sort of stuff.
That's right.
They had to try and modernize it, and they don't talk about anything negative, and it's all about just acceptance of people.
It's the same thing. I also had a priest in my local town, and he was into rock music, and he actually did the devil horns and all that. It was quite funny.
Yeah.
Sorry. We are more laid back about religion here in Scandinavia, I think, and that sometimes it bites us in the ass, especially about censorship when we come to Islam. But let's not talk about that.
No, we can, but I just didn't think it was.
All right, I'm going about an agenda about this right now.
I didn't understand.
We have a lot of problems.
Yeah, I am. You can count me in on that.
All right. Because you all know about the Muhammad drawings.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I know about them.
Yeah.
It was back in 2006 when we had a statement.
Drew them up. Yeah.
It was when we had a state minister known as Anders Fogh.
Yeah.
And he drew a cartoon about.
Yeah, and at first he didn't want to redraw them. He thought this is a democracy. We have freedom of speech. You just have to get used to it, because it wasn't necessarily the Muslim country that complained. It was Iran and Afghanistan that complained to us, because the Muslim in our country, they phoned back home, and it's just ridiculous. You can't get a country to call another country what to do.
To influence.
And at last he did give in, which was kind of sad. And that's the sort of thing we have here. We actually in 2010 we had to get a blasphemy law, and it's just, and we have only done this because of the Islamic population, and it's quite interpretive. You can't. The law says you can't offend somebody's religion, but how do you define that legally? Does that mean you can say I don't believe in it, or I think it's bullshit? How do you define that?
You stopping me, you could go to all sorts of lengths. You could be like, you not allowing me to buy this public property to build this monument to honor my God is offensive to, you know, those sorts of things. Anything. Yeah, it's silly interpretation.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, I have been accused by some of my. I actually know well. There lives about 6 million people in Denmark, about 6 million, and 500 to 800,000 of those are people from Islamic countries now. We have a lot of immigrants. The numbers are higher in Sweden, a lot higher. And the funny thing is, as soon as we criticize them, they say to us, and I may sound a little racist, but I'm actually not. They say that, oh, we are victims, we are coming, we shouldn't judge you because we're different culture. I said, fine, you can keep your culture. But that's not integration. If you keep it, then we're gonna have the same problem as the UK, where multiculturalism doesn't seem to work.
Mhm.
That's not integration.
Actually, though,
I have nothing against you having your religion in your private, nothing at all. But if you don't want to integrate into the society, that's when we're gonna have a problem. And as soon as I say that, they call me a racist. But then I tell them, I'm not a racist. I have nothing against you. And then they say a new term, which I think is strange. They say that I am an Islamophobe.
Islamophobe, yeah.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing in the UK is that we recently got rid of a blasphemy law. I think,
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Great.
I think it was in 2010 actually. Blasphemy used to be a crime until about 2010. But having said that, it was one of those sort of nominal laws that no one really got imprisoned for blasphemy in the UK. It was just a law that was sort of a relic still there. But I think they got rid of it in 2010. And there was also another law about I think there was a law that said that you can't insult anyone. Insulting speech was actually illegal, and that one was also got rid of, I believe. And now you can. I think now legally you are allowed to insult people. I don't think anyone was ever arrested for this, but it was technically illegal, and now it's not.
I was just interested in pointing out. Sorry, I was just interested in pointing out that in Australia, our current PM that just got he got put in a year ago, I think. He's been shown to be like completely anti-immigration. Like he's setting up a border force, which is going to be like fighter jets and like radar detection across the north of Australia to like stop anything from coming in, like any immigration in that sense. And he snuck in this cheeky sort of way of, I think, trying to achieve that what you're saying, and that is he loosened adoption rules for children from third world countries and places like that. So I think in a way he's sort of like happy to have young people who can be sort of shaped, I suppose, into a way of living more so, or into a lifestyle or into a culture, rather than allowing, adult families and things to sort of come over. I'm not sure that it's. I mean, I'm not sure. He's not willing to openly say that that's what he believes, but I mean, he's sort of I don't know. He's pretty right wing, and it just sort of follows along with his policies that he's put in place.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not sure.
I have a question for you guys. Do you think that I sound racist when I talk about them like that?
Well, no, because I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah, but still, what? Because
no,
I just think that you might have to preface it with the point that, like, I mean, it's not like, I mean, you would say that, in Denmark that, everyone's free to express themselves as long as they're not impeding on each other, or hurting each other, or, anything like that. Wouldn't you agree? Like, you'd say it's a great, sort of accepting culture.
Yeah, but then we have another problem because I don't know if you're sure about we have just in EU we have just elected our new legislation where we talked about the patent law, and there was something about my country. When you come to this country, every country in Europe, you need to be treated the same way and have the same obligations and the same living standards. They cannot be worse than the living standard you came from. That's a law we have. But in Denmark, you have to work here and live here for 2 years before you can get something we call child money and full payment. And that is actually against the EU. But we have done this because a lot of times we have found out that people from Poland and from the Middle East, they come here, take the money, and they send the money back home. They are actually destroying our society. And we say that to them, they think we are racist. But we actually
no. That I think no. If you make that point clear, I think that's certain that you're not being racist in any way, shape, or form. I just think, yeah. No. I understand. I just think, when you say the initial thing you were sort of saying, sort of felt like you can come over here, and as long as you go to the local stores like we do, and don't go to church on the weekends, and these types of things. It sounded like you meant that should be the case, but you just mean people shouldn't come in and just abuse the country and take resources elsewhere.
I also think they should integrate into the society, but to a certain extent. Of course, I don't want them to give up their entire culture. Not at all. I know that is impossible. But a good example would be if you look at the UK. The Asian population of UK, you never hear about them not integrating. They are some of the best people in the world to integrate into another society because they want to work, they want to make a living. But why is it always people from the Islamic countries who are not willing to integrate? There's something wrong there, and I don't know what it is.
I'll tell you why it is, actually.
Why?
Well, I've actually written about this and discussed it before. It's to do with not only the religion but the culture. People don't understand that Islam is Arabism. There's no other way to put it. Christianity doesn't rely on a sort of cultural identity in a sense. It's very diverse. But Islam at its core is Arabism in every sense of the word. And
isn't that the same with the Jews?
Yes, but the Jews there are tribes bigger, and there are bigger tribes in Africa than there are the number of Jews in the world. Okay, there are 12 million Jews in the world. There are literally tribes bigger in Africa that are bigger in Africa than the amount you just hear about Jews. But in terms of per capita, they're like less than 0.0001% of the world population. So it doesn't really come into effect. But also Jews don't convert people. Now Islam does actually try to go out and convert people. That's one of the goals of Islam. You cannot do that in Judaism. It is against Jewish law. Which is why you don't get Jews going up to your door and saying, "Have you ever heard about Moses? Wouldn't you like to be Jewish?" No. What the problem is in the Arab world, in the Islamic world, it is almost exclusively homogenous, meaning that you have a huge majority of the population that are Muslims. Okay. And Christians and Jews and Zoroastrians and others are an extreme minority compared to what you have in the West. So they come from a culture where their philosophy, their way of life, their outlook is completely dominant in ways that we cannot imagine. In so much that you even have Christian Arabs and Jews from Arab countries who use Arab sayings. For example, Inshallah, okay, which is a Muslim saying, but it's so pervasive that even for Christian Arabs and for Jews from Islamic countries, they still say it as well because it is the culture. It is that is the Islamic culture. So they're coming from a culture where they are the superior dominant people. Now they're going to a country where they are the minority. They've never experienced this before. It does not enter into their philosophical worldview. Okay, they don't know how to deal with it. And I'm making gross generalities here because obviously there are many Muslims.
Well, we need to do that in order to make a point.
Right. There are many Muslims who go deal with it fine. I know, several in France that I was very friendly with when I was living there. I grew up in England, and literally my best friends when I was very young were Pakistanis down the street. Two boys down the street living from me, and we had we were best friends. So there are obviously many examples, but I'm talking about just generally. They're coming from a culture where they don't know how to adapt in the same way as somebody from the West going to another place where they would be a minority, because their worldview does not include minorities.
But why can the Asians adapt so well then? Because they have a completely different culture, especially in Japan.
But that's why, because it's not Islamism. Islam is a certain superiority religion, okay? You can't get around it. Sam Harris has talked about this many times. it is not the peace-loving. There are passages from the earlier surahs that were more peaceful, etc. But the later ones are all about war, and there's this problem in Islam called abrogation, where when there are two conflicting surahs, the later one takes precedence over the older one. Okay, so the latest one supersedes the oldest one, and since Muhammad was much more peace-loving and accepting in his earlier days, before he was shunned by people who rejected him, he became very violent and vicious towards them. You have a major problem in Islam, because the violent verses are the ones technically that are the ones that matter the most. So when the last surah of Muhammad says you should kill the infidel, because that's the last thing he says about the infidel in the Quran. Okay, it supersedes all the other ones that he said, where we have to be understanding, you cannot enforce a religion, etc. So that's a major problem in Israel. In Islam, it's a very dominating kind of culture, and that's why you have a problem with integration, because they live in a dominating sort of mentality, and they don't know how to let go. It's very difficult for them, and I'm talking about most believers here, but also people just generally from the culture, because it is also cultural. It is not only for people who are religious. Look at Indonesia, for example. A country which was not anything close to Arab. Is primarily Muslim, and you have a complete superimposition of one culture from the Middle East imposed on another culture, which is Southeast Asian, which had absolutely nothing in common with it, but it was conquered, and the rules of Islam were imposed, and now people are living a sort of alien lifestyle, in a sense, culturally speaking, to what they were living before. You could say the same about Christianity in Latin America. I said I'm not arguing that point, and there are many points to be made about that. I'm just talking about Islam right now. So that's why you have a major problem with integration.
I also think it comes from Islam is actually, I think it's the only religion left that has not yet had its reformation.
Yes.
It hasn't had that yet. We're still waiting for it, and I think the problems in the Middle East will only be resolved as soon as they have had that. They need to become more moderate, or adapt to
I agree.
They're not gonna not just you can't just completely just shift, totally, but they need to just cut out some of the nonsense of hurting people, particularly.
Well, I'm going to say something quite controversial, which I've actually said before. And when I mean controversial as saying it as a Jew, or well, I'm still an atheist, but
And you're not afraid to, and you hear this first on the Supernatural Side Salad Show.
Yes. No, I've said it before, though. I think I said it on the Magic Sandwich Show, but I'm not sure. One of
That was a joke. Carry on.
Well, one of the best things that ever happened to the Jewish people, quite frankly, was the destruction of the temple by the Romans in 70 AD. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that what the Romans did was a war crime. Enslaving people, massacring them is a war crime. Destroying an entire country and renaming it, etc., is a war crime. However, in the historical retrospective after 2,000 years, in a sense, it was one of the best things that happened to the Jewish people, because what it taught Jewish people was a sense of humility and a sense of valuing education, and that in a way it basically made them appreciate the little that they had at the time afterwards for quite a long time. That's why you get so many Jewish doctors and lawyers and physicists and scientists, etc., because
they appreciate progression.
Yes. Yeah. But before that act from Rome, I'll be honest, Jews could conduct themselves extremely barbarically. Okay, the Jews that the Romans fought against were maniacs. There's no doubt in my mind. I'm not excusing the Romans, taking over the country, etc. But what I'm saying is that Jews had a messianic craziness about them, which goes into the whole Jesus phenomenon, which essentially gets destroyed, and so in a sense, losing that sense of superiority, losing that ultimate battle, was something which saved the Jews in the end. Because I don't think, and I think most historians would agree, that Jews would have survived as a people had this not happened. They would have just been another tribe, vanishing into history after a few hundred years of Roman occupation. So, and I'm not now. This is where I have to be very, very careful. This is where
I think that is. I also going to say some controversial.
This is where I have to be very, very careful. But,
well, do you think that is the reason why all the Arabic countries hate Israel, because they are much better than them? They are
no. What I'm saying, the controversial thing I want to say, historically speaking, in a national psyche sort of way, the best thing that could happen to the Muslim world would be a similar defeat. However, we live in modern times. We no longer wipe cities off the map. We no longer enslave entire peoples and disperse them to the winds. So that is not a realistic goal. But in a historical perspective, one of the things that really could save, I think, Islam from this superiority complex that it does have would be at least a huge civil war and possibly a war over Mecca or something. It sometimes historically, and I don't want this to happen. I'm not advocating this to happen. I'm just talking about in historical context. Sometimes the best things, the best philosophical realizations come after a huge tragedy, a huge loss, a huge war. And I would cite that as one example. The Jewish people losing the temple, losing Jerusalem, would be one of those things. I'm actually very happy that we got it back in 1967, but for completely different reasons, since I obviously don't believe in God. But there you go. That's my huge little spiel about that. So fire away.
Actually, if you were to say that in my country, that wouldn't be controversial at all, actually. The funny thing is, in my country, we have an extremely high tolerance for something that might be considered racist by Americans, actually.
Yeah, I know.
So it's no problem here, but maybe for some Americans or other viewers, it might be controversial.
Well, I would say it's probably controversial for most Jews to hear that, too. But I'm speaking on a historical level, and
sure. History is harsh.
It is, and might I add, I say this as somebody somebody who whose mother survived the Holocaust. So I obviously am not in favor of massacres or enslavement or torture, etc. My worst enemies are Nazis. Okay, I have I make no bones about that whatsoever. I loathe them absolutely, but historically speaking, in terms of what was good for the Jewish people in retrospect, was this kind of thing which forced them to adapt to other ways. I still contend that this is the case. I think a lot of historians, even some here in Israel, would agree. So there you go. I don't know how you feel about it, Quantum, but if you're still there, I'm not even looking at the screen. I don't know who's there.
He's yeah.
Are we having a technical problem of some description?
No.
All right.
All as well. Oh, you are. Oh, he is. That's fine.
I can just imagine Quantum is just sitting there behind his keyboard and sweating because he thinks he's going to be against UMC 8.
Don't worry, this thing isn't that popular.
I've said I've said this before, but I forget if it was on the Magic Sandwich Show, if it was maybe in another hangout. And I know that there will be other people who disagree with me. I think mostly Jews, but again,
I think it's fair to say that you're commenting. I mean, you're commenting as, the I mean, social structures over time. Like,
yeah,
you're speaking sociology in a sociology sense. Does that make sense?
yes,
I think people get caught up in, well, but I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or whatever. It's
yeah,
like, well, that's not a problem, but you have to look back at and accept, where these ideas came from, and yeah.
yeah, yeah. I try to take a very
So no one should be
dispassionate
offended.
view on
No one should be
history.
offended, basically.
Actually, I think people like that have no right to be offended, because just look at Germany. Look at what they have to go through every single day. They have to regret what they have done. So
Yeah.
people, just because you tell someone about their ancient past and they get offended by it because you talk negatively about it, I don't think they should have any right to be offended. If anything, it should be Germans who should be offended.
Well, it
We
depends.
always back down upon them, always.
No, it depends because
Not future generations. I mean, not. I mean, they
no,
should.
no, no. I don't.
Attest to not. They should attest to not. You should attest to not making the mistakes of your past. Like, I mean, there's history of an Australian culture which, incredibly racist, and basically one of the only countries to have committed actual genocide on the indigenous populations that don't basically exist in the way that they used to, which no one talks about. It's disgusting. This whole stolen generation and all this.
They apologize.
But I don't think for a second that I mean, I feel incredibly bad that occurred, but I should in no way feel any sort of guilt on myself personally, nor should anyone.
Germany actually do that?
Well, no, I don't.
Sorry.
I'll tell you. First of all, I'll tell you most Israelis don't feel that Germans alive today should be apologizing. I mean, that's most Israelis do not feel that Germans should be apologizing. They think that's wrong.
Yeah. Sure, but the problem is the same with a lot of Afro Americans. They still have this slave mentality. They still feel like they are worth nothing, and that's the same with Germany.
Yeah.
They still have this enormous skill. They are really ashamed to talk about it. The same with they have. You were not allowed to have anything symbolizing the Nazi regime in Germany. It's completely illegal. Completely. But that's not the case in Russia. They still have statues of Stalin.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, some Germans will freely talk about it. I mean, I've talked.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I mean, it is true about their speech laws. I mean, it's illegal to deny the Holocaust, for example, which it's not illegal to deny it in the UK, although the social consequences of denying it might be used. But it's illegal for any sort of, like, for instance, displaying the swastika is illegal. And there was a case recently, actually, where there was a political party that had as its slogan a swastika that was crossed out.
Let me guess, they were Indian.
I don't know, but no.
It was an anti-Nazi party, and they had their symbol was a swastika with in a circle with I think it was a circle with a cross out of it, like, so no Nazis, and it was deemed to be illegal because the swastika technically is illegal. So, yeah.
But what do you do if it is an Indian, because it's actually an Indian or Hindu symbol?
Yeah, I know.
I think.
But what do you do about that?
There are
I don't know.
Germany. So I think if you've got a very good reason for doing it, I think you can get away with it. But it's something that is highly unacceptable. I mean, if you just put a swastika in the street, I mean, you would get arrested for it, and you wouldn't get arrested for doing it in the UK. Although
No, I am actually against censorship, including censoring Holocaust denial. I am against that in principle. However, when it comes to Germany, I understand why they're doing it. I'm not saying that I necessarily agree, but I think that, well, let me put it this way. It's like affirmative action, okay? I am actually technically against affirmative action because it does judge people based on the color of their skin. However, I believe that it was a necessary evil in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s because of the situation in which many African Americans were in, to sort of help regulate a great injustice. I believe that the problem with affirmative action is they never slowly downsized it, and that became, because it's a government program, and government programs never downsize.
I mean, we've still got a lot of affirmative action, though. I mean,
no, I know. You have a lot of racism. You still need. But my point is, I see it as a sort of necessary evil. So I don't go around just saying, well, affirmative action sucks, etc. I am against it in principle because it does judge somebody on the color of their skin, which to me is in principle offensive. But I understand the reasoning behind it, and as long as it's a contained sort of response to as a reaction to what a century, 2 centuries of racism and institutionalized slavery did, I understand it as a remedy. In the same way, I understand why the Germans made Holocaust denial illegal and why they made the swastika illegal. I understand it in principle, even as a Jew, even as somebody who was born to somebody who survived the Holocaust in a concentration camp. I understand the necessity of doing so in Germany, because not that Germans alive today, I mean there are a couple left of World War II, but very few. Not that they're today, but they had a lot of issues to sort out with after that, because it was a terrible crime against humanity, and it was a huge, I would say, event in human history. So they really had to deal with that in the same way that Americans had to deal with their racist past. So they needed some laws which temporarily, I think, and I would only agree with them if they be temporarily suspend normal, rights in favor of this. But that's as far as I'll go.
But there was in the case of looking at Germany, it seems to be the case that outside of the Nazi sphere of oppression, the Germans did actually behave very well towards people like the Jews. For instance, in occupied countries, I mean, not actually in Germany, which was the Nazi sphere, but outside of Germany, in places like Belgium, I think Belgium, Denmark, those sorts of places outside the Nazi sphere, there were cases where the German army would put Jewish people onto boats and then send them off to Scandinavia. And
that was volunteers who some of them were killed by the Germans.
But the German army
Raoul Wallenberg
allowed it to happen. I mean, the German army knew that this was happening, and they allowed it to happen. I mean,
there were instances. No, there were instances where some people were bribed, or they made it some sort of a deal to take Jews, etc., out of the hands of people who were supposed to be handling them at the time. But those are honestly extremely rare. Extremely rare. I'm not saying it didn't happen. It did, but overall, no. Overall, most of the people sent them gleefully. That's for sure. I'm not, you can't deny that.
No, of course not. But I think it did. I don't think it was that uncommon outside of Germany and Austria. I don't think it ever really happened in Germany and Austria. But in some of the occupied countries.
I mean, in Vichy, France, they sent a ton of them to the gas chambers, actually. And there was a big commemoration of it where they actually acknowledged it finally 20 years ago. I was there taking pictures for Agence France Presse, I think it was at the time, it was amazing that they finally admitted it, that they had done this. So no, it depended. Look, in Denmark, the Danish did save a hell of a lot of Jews. And in fact, when the Danes got overrun, they put a ton of them on boats to Sweden. That's true. That's absolutely true.
Oh no, it was Norway, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it might have been Norway. Yeah.
Because I think Sweden was occupied by Germany.
Yeah. It was Norway, I think. But those instances, frankly, are fairly rare overall. And it also depended where you were, because like in Eastern Europe, for example, no, there were huge amounts of Jews that were literally just machine gunned, right then and there.
Yeah, I mean, but this is of course the thing. I mean, these events did happen in countries that were away from Nazi influence. I don't really know that much about Vichy France, but the places like Belgium and Denmark. I mean, even occupied Scandinavia did the survival rate among Jewish citizens was significantly higher.
Oh yeah, definitely, because when Denmark were occupied by Germany, it was fairly peaceful actually.
Well, it was the king.
There were some liquidations.
Yeah, it was the king who put on, because the Germans said Jews have to put on the armband, and the king put on the armband, the king of Denmark, and said, then I'm putting it on as well.
Yes, yes.
And in that way, he saved pretty much most of the Jewish population.
But do you know why Hitler accepted that actually?
Yeah, because they were Nordic.
Yes, exactly. They saw us as the Aryans.
Yes.
That's the funny thing about it. He actually wrote a letter to some of his officers where he said, "You are not to harm the Danish, the Swedes, or the Norwegians."
Yeah. It was they were Nordic, and so he
pretty crazy.
I mean, another interesting example that I suppose history doesn't look too kindly on this, but Switzerland didn't behave that well during the Second World War.
No.
Switzerland, for example, did send a lot of Jewish citizens back. Although Switzerland's actually an interesting example because there are cases where German planes were shot down by German guns inside Switzerland, and what would happen is that Switzerland did a good job of shooting down both German planes and Allied planes, and they would shoot down planes that went into their territory. And the thing was that Germany didn't take Switzerland because it was too much of a they could have done, but it behaved a bit like an irritant. So it would have taken too much away from their resources to even bother with Switzerland. But Switzerland did manage to piss off the Germans. But of course, at the same time, they sent back a lot of Jewish citizens to Germany. So
well, it was more than that. They were also financing the Germans.
Well, they were financing us.
Yeah.
As well. Switzerland played both sides.
Yeah, I know. In a sense, they bought their neutrality. But there is an element of truth as well when Germany just basically fighting in the Alps is really hard. Is really, really hard. And to take a country like Switzerland, you're going to lose a lot of people doing it.
It was also the fact that the Swiss threatened to blow up a load of railway lines. Yeah,
and the bridges. I think they mined the bridges or something. They got them ready to blow up, or I can't remember. But yeah.
Yeah, it's the case. So that if the Germans did invade Switzerland, they would end up not being able to deliver supplies through Switzerland, and then as a way to get to France or Italy or some other. Anyway, so.
Quantum.
I don't know if he's still there.
I was actually wondering, do you know that old English joke that they say that if you want to know if a German is a spy, you have to make him say squirrel?
No, I didn't know that one.
You don't know that one?
Sorry, I'm sometimes I'm only half here because I'm killing Draugr in a Nordic rune right now. I'm playing Skyrim, so I've been playing Skyrim the entire time, if you can believe it. And I haven't died yet, so I'm pretty proud.
What was some of the other topics we were to talk about? Or you want us?
I don't know. You guys should take. I feel like I've talked a hell of a lot. So.
Yeah, I mean the other topic that they had in the Magic Summer show was one about tolerance of various sexualities. I think homosexuality was.
I thought we were going to talk about feminism again. Not again. Not again.
Do we have to? Because every time
the line must be drawn. The line must be drawn here.
No further.
Yeah.
I'd rather talk about Star Trek, to be honest. I don't
In what
understand. I
way
don't
though?
understand.
In what way though? I don't. In what way do you just mean? Do you just mean? What do you mean?
Well, what
You want to talk about it?
well, I mean, there was something about one person asking someone else out in an elevator, and then 2 years later, everyone's got pitchforks, and it just seems like everything. It just seems like the whole thing is overblown to
Ah,
ridiculous proportions. I mean,
the whole yeah,
the whole
that
like
whole publicized sort of skeptic side of it.
Are we gonna really talk about Rebecca Watson?
Oh no, please don't. Please don't.
I wasn't going to talk about that actually, but what I was going to say is that there should be something a better, a bigger, a more sensible force that's talking against though the actual issues like the percentage of violence that men commit on women. I don't know in your countries, but in Australia it's a lot higher. Women are way more likely to be victims of domestic abuse, assault, all the key indicators basically. And there's got to be something there that we're talking about to change that. There's a problem there, and obviously I wouldn't agree that some of these particular issues with particular what you would consider, I suppose, modern day feminism aren't the key concerns. There's certainly, I mean, I don't know what you want to call it, but there's certainly a need for something. Does that make sense?
I actually agree. I just I don't think any reasonable person is. I don't think like people even like the amazing atheist are disagreeing with the fact that there is sexism in society.
Well, that's hard when I listen to him. I just really
Well,
struggle
no, because
with
he's very rambunctious and he presents his. I don't actually.
And he screams. Oh, and he does one thing that really annoys me. Sorry, and it's exactly it's equivalent to me being a white person or Caucasian. Going, oh, I'm being discriminated by an Aboriginal man because I'm white or something like this. I mean, shut up! Like it's not affecting you. You have more all your rights, all your all your things. He's not doing anything. Does it make sense? Like screaming, reverse racism, basically.
No,
it's like the same thing when I hear guys going, "Oh, but women say, oh, I'm a piece of shit," and rah rah rah. And it's like, well,
no, but I think he brings up
obviously, but we're trying to stop.
Yeah.
But we're trying to stop. Obviously,
I think
there are women who have wrong perceptions of men or warped perceptions of masculinity.
The problem with this sort of thing, though, is that in many cases, what happens is people do things naively. I mean, do you remember Coney 2012? It was a thing. It was the big thing in a few days ago. I mean, Coney was this Ugandan warlord, and he basically steals children and then fights them against the Ugandans. And there was this big campaign.
Did you say Coney? Did you say Coney?
Coney.
Yeah, I recall that. Yeah, I recall that.
There was this big campaign in
Isn't it spelled Conan?
Yeah, there was this big campaign a couple of years ago called Coney 2012, and it was designed to raise awareness. But the trouble was, if anything, it made it worse because they went about it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but this is the sort of problem with modern day feminism. You have to be careful. You don't just wade in and you don't just make stupid assumptions. I mean, part of the problem is that if you're hypersensitive about absolutely everything, then people, I mean, this is just true. This is what happens. If you cry wolf all the time, then when an actual wolf comes along, people don't take it as seriously. And this is the real problem. When people say things like, I live in a rape culture, when rape is actually relatively rare. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of course it does. And the majority of perpetrators are men, of course. But when people say things like that, it's taken less seriously by society as a whole. So as ironically, like things like comparing video games, comparing like sexualization in video games to rape, that sort of thing, it sort of trivializes.
Unfortunately, though, for a woman, if I'm a young woman, if I approach my sexual encounters with men in a way where I'm being cautious initially, because I feel that I'm of the understanding that I live in the culture where rape occurs, and I'm sensible about it. I'm more likely to be safer because I'm not going to take risks. I'm going to make sure that I know the person. These types of things that can prevent violent acts against a woman who's more vulnerable in most cases. I think that that's a positive thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is.
I'm not suggesting. I agree with you though. Like the mechanism that it's being, that the information is being, put in this sort of, sort of whiny, sort of moany, sort of, not want to listen to any arguments or any disagreements to the position is, not a good mechanism.
But this is the sort of ironic thing because of course there are things you can do to reduce the risk of becoming a victim. But what some people do is they are actively opposed things like the sort of thing like if you're drunk, then obviously you go with friends so that you're in a position where people are likely to take you home. You don't walk out alone. These sorts of things. And in some universities in the UK. Some university organisations will put up things like this, things about basic safety in a city where crimes tend to be quite high, and there are people that are actively opposed to this sort of thing because I don't know why. I think it's the idea, the idea that you should tell people not to rape rather than that sort of thing. When in reality, if you can reduce the risk, then sure, do whatever you can to do that, and I don't see why people are so opposed to this sort of thing. The interesting thing is, of course, that despite the fact that women tend to be the victims of sexual violence more often than men, it tends to be the case that men tend to be the victims of ordinary sorts of assaults more often, and this tends to be because men are more confrontational around other men. The vast majority of violent crimes are committed by men. We know that, but in terms of drug-related assaults, violent assaults, homicides, gun crime, that sort of thing, men tend to be the victims more often than not, merely because there's a psychology that if you're with another man, you tend to become more aggressive towards that other person.
That's a battle of masculinity, and that's there's issues there within. The whole, you got the balls to do it, man. Like you got the, you got the guts. You're not a pussy. You're not a woman, or you're not a weak sort of individual. That sort of. There's huge problems with all that crap. That causes a lot of violence between men. Yeah.
And now you know why I hate jocks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's personified example.
Well, I agree. My position about the whole feminism and atheism thing is I clearly agree with Thunderfoot. But
where is he when we need him?
What?
We need him on here right now.
Yeah, I know. I clearly agree with Thunderfoot. Well, I agree with Thunderfoot on most.
He doesn't need to. He doesn't. He. I know, but he's not. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is that
girls, I didn't like when there was a couple of girls that were on the Magic Sandwich show.
I was there.
I don't know. Was that the show you were on that one with those two girls and
I
they were sort of
I
like,
either watched it or I was on it. I can't remember. But
they were skeptic, like lackeys sort of thing, lower down the food chain, so to speak, on that side or whatever. I just really don't think that. Some of the questions he was posing to them, they hadn't really come. They were just thinking about their best idea they could come up with on the fly because they'd never thought about, this question he was asking in that dynamic. And he was being a bit sort of, rude, really. He says he's not being rude, but he doesn't, he doesn't even approach Christian fundamentalists with such sort of shut down, in your face, that's right, you're wrong, and this means this, and carrying on. And it
I
was
think
like,
I
really,
understand why.
these girls just need to be presented with the information,
No, I
and
understand
you
why.
Was this
can
the
manipulate and can, you know, sort of get across your point a lot better than the way he was doing it, you know, in
But
No, I
that
understand why.
program.
nevertheless, he did raise some valid points, though.
Yeah, but the reason why he takes that out, I think, I mean, he didn't tell me, but I think it's pretty clear.
The shockwave effect.
No, I think it's much more personal to him. As in, it's a sort of betrayal of the community which he has been involved with from the start.
Can I just
Oh yeah,
say,
that whole thing from Free.
can I just say something quickly? If you're talking about that episode, the Magic Sandwich Show that was talking about abortion, if you're talking about that episode, Thunderfoot was drunk during that episode, so I think that's.
Thunderfoot was drinking. That's,
Well, I think
That wouldn't help. That wouldn't help how he came across.
but I don't know. I mean, I think
He said he had a hangover or something.
yeah, oh, yeah, that's right. He said he had a hangover. That's right. I remember that. And I wasn't in it. I was commenting to, I think it was Ozzy or somebody else at the time while it was going on. So I wasn't in it. I was watching it. I was commenting
I'm sure.
online at the time.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he would have revisited it, and you know.
But,
I mean, I'm sure. You know.
While we are
he's
talking
not-
about it, I'm actually more curious. Why was it that Aaron became angry at Thunder?
Well, because Aaron takes the completely opposite position. Aaron
No.
supports-
There was something
no.
Aaron said that
There was a
Thunder.
breakdown in communication. There was a huge breakdown in communication with Aaron Ra's wife and Thunderfoot, and they couldn't bridge the gap basically, and it was just they just kept missing each other, and Aaron was just trying to defend her point of view, and
But
he
Aaron
delved in territory. He delved in territory that he hadn't really delved into.
I
much
remember being
before,
on
I don't think.
a 7-hour
Yeah.
Magic Sandwich Show, and it had.
7 hour.
Did you-
Yeah, I
I
remember
think
that one.
you-
Yeah, I
you-
remember it.
Weren't you on it as well? I think we met.
Oh, for a small brief period, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that one was ridiculous, but I remember because
Yeah.
it had Aaron Ra, Thunderfoot, and Aaron Ra's wife on it, as far as I can remember, and we were talking about things like-
Elandra.
Yeah, that's it. I keep getting confused because Ozzy's wife is also called something similar. So, I think the crux of the debate was something like what the definition of feminism was. I think Aaron Ra's point was that if you believe in equality, you are a feminist, and then Thunderfoot's point was something along the lines of, language depends on its context. If you're a libertarian, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you believe in liberty, you don't necessarily call yourself a libertarian. You know, that sort of thing. That I guess Thunderfoot didn't want to associate with a lot of the radical.
And the main part that was kept getting missed. Sorry, I'll just quickly say this. It was she kept still believing that Thunderfoot was blaming the victim, but Thunderfoot wouldn't explicitly do them the courtesy of running them through exactly his position and how he doesn't think that. He just refused to, and it was incredibly frustrating, and I don't know why still to this day he didn't do that. I'm sure he did some of that, you know, in a text chat or something with Aaron Ra, because they are able to be in another hangout since then. So they must have resolved some things, but I just don't know why he didn't just talk her through how he doesn't look. You know, I understand what your concern with blaming the victim. I don't blame the victim here, etc., etc. I mean, isn't that what you would do? I mean, it's what I would have done, and it wouldn't have exploded the way it did.
But I think it was something else, because at the moment Aaron he yelled a little bit. He said that Thunder liked a video and he knew there was something in there that was bullshit. But what was it he was talking about?
He just pulled some random. That was a couple of weeks later, I remember, and he'd just done some. He'd gone through a bunch of videos. He'd just been keeping up with what Thunderfoot had been favoriting, and was trying to find something that was, you know, incorrect or something like that. I suppose it was just to try and show that he's fallible, I guess. But I don't know.
That's really immature, though, isn't it? Because
yeah, of course.
To pick someone that Thunderfoot subscribed to and then saying, "Oh, this person I don't like," so I mean, one of the people that I can't stand is someone that Thunderfoot subscribes to. I'm not going to say who it is, but there's, there is
Ben.
there is someone.
It's all right. This show's getting wiped from the air, mate.
Yeah,
This isn't going to last 5 minutes.
well, there is someone that Thunderfoot subscribed to and favourites an awful lot of this guy's videos, and it's someone that I cannot stand. Mostly because I've conversed. Maybe okay. To be fair, it was on a YouTube comment, so you can't exactly expect the quality of conversation to be good. But he's a complete and utter arsehole, and you can probably guess who I'm thinking to. But the thing was with this guy, he would constantly strawman you every single comment, and you could just not engage with this person. And yeah, this was someone that Thunderfoot subscribed to, and I'm not going to unsubscribe to Thunderfoot just because he likes this guy. I mean, how childish and immature is that? It's just okay. I will write the name in the chat.
Well, here's the thing. To get back to the whole debate, I do agree with Thunderfoot in principle, absolutely. And I even agree. What?
I think this is the thing. Like, I think he's correct, and so is like where the feminism sort of argument is coming from. You know what I mean? Like, he's correct in that we should do things to protect women, through statistics. If statistics say that if you are by yourself, late at night, that the chances of being assaulted, etc., go up by a certain percent. So it's not enforced, but if you want to reduce your risks, here's the information. Here are the statistics. Use them as you please. I mean, if we didn't have to bloody interpret statistics for people, we could just leave the statistics out for everyone on the table, and everyone could delve into them. But I just feel like he didn't connect the dots for them. He could have connected the dots, but I felt like he didn't feel he had to.
It's not. This isn't. I don't want to talk about Thunderfoot's attitude right now because that's not really the point for me. The point is, what's he responding to, and what it is a hysteria in the movement, I believe. That in a sense, everything in the movement is rotten with sexism, with, as they term it, misogyny, which I believe is the incorrect term. It's sexism.
Sure, that's probably not the case, but you got to be careful. Remember that if you go the other way, even if you're correct in a sense, like there are people who will interpret those sort of, they'll slip under the cracks. The people that it's going to take advantage, who have the views you're trying to change, or you have the views you're trying to, spotlight and say this is wrong. Does that make any sense?
No, I'll tell you. No, because look, my problem really stems from the skeptic, free thought blogs, atheism plus crowd.
Yeah, of course. I understand what you're saying, right? And what I'm suggesting is having a sook about a group of women who are upset because they feel they were mistreated. That's fine, okay? Let them, if they're poisoning, whatever, just move your things around. I mean, that's what's happening right now. They've almost got established their own sort of off the side jaded sort of community. I mean, it's sort of atheism plus. I mean, who is that anymore? I mean, that's fine. I don't see how you would want to crush down them to away sort of thing, and then allow people who have incredibly misogynistic, incredibly sexist views still in society. I don't know about where you're from, but people every day just so sexist, racist, vile, vicious, and these are the sorts of attitudes that I want changed. And I feel like that if you are gonna, have a real sook about, some light-hearted, in a sense, in the terms of what impact it's having on society. You know, skeptic or whatever. I mean, I don't know.
No,
I just don't feel
again,
like it's a
let me
priority in this
let me
sense.
finish what I was going to say, because you're going
I
on. I
apologize.
mean, no,
I,
it's okay. I understand where you're coming from, and it has to be said. However, I'm talking about a lot of the characters involved, like Rebecca Watson, who, frankly, are basically, to me, essentially the chattering class. Okay, they contribute almost nothing to the real
hmm.
discussion. They do only talk about, I mean, they talk almost nothing about atheism or the fundamentalists, etc. Their whole shtick is about sexism in the atheism and skeptical community.
Yeah, yeah.
And now that to me is trolling in a sense. I mean, I said in another hangout today that I really kind of disagree with the entire concept that even trolling sort of exists, but which is another debate on itself. But my point is that they really don't do anything other than just try to piss off everybody else and say, well, no, you guys suck because you're sexist. It's
Yeah,
sort of like
yeah,
the
yeah.
chattering classes that people make fun of. Like it's like the courtiers at court, the little toadies at court. That's what they're like. That's what I'm opposed to.
It's like the fundamental Christian. It's sort of like the fundamental Christian, though. Isn't the best way to get across to the fundamental Christian or to change his view to sort of, just ease his views a little bit. Sort of, make him a little less, sort of strict, in and literal in his interpretations and these types of things. Does that make sense? Like, aren't you better off arguing in a, in a way that's sort of, I don't know, not, it's
No,
acknowledging the
because
problems that it's
no.
acknowledging the problems that are existing, and
First,
it's saying,
I
what are we going to do
disagree.
about it?
I'll tell you why I disagree. Because these people don't want to acknowledge anything other than radical stuff, and the only way to deal with that is mockery, frankly. I also don't agree that dealing with these fundamental Christians in a polite and civil way is the only way to go. Just as I don't agree that dealing with this chattering class of, I hate calling them feminists because I don't think that they are feminists, but these quote unquote feminist atheists is polite chatter. I think that they should be mocked for their stupid, frankly, outrageous and fundamentalist beliefs, which are
Yeah,
completely
their opinions.
dogmatic in every
Yeah,
single
yeah.
way. And
Oh, yeah.
so I
Mm.
don't think I think that Thunderfoot, frankly, is doing a service. The problem I have is I see it as kind of a betrayal
But
of
with the
radical
Landra, he could
feminism.
clarify with her, though, surely, couldn't he? I mean, with Landra, he could have clarified. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have to uphold his.
No, because I think
I mean,
she's more.
he's
I
done his
think
video. He's done his video that's had thousands of views or whatever. That wrecking Rebecca Watson. That's fine. There's a place for that. I understand what you're saying. It's good. People are convinced by that in some ways, sometimes. But like someone like Aaron
Melandra.
Raz,
Yeah.
Mrs. Yeah, he could have. I don't know. I just walked her through it a bit. Does that make sense?
I think it's important to understand though that Thunderfoot's style is almost universally confrontational. I mean, I think this is partly because Thunderfoot's channel is entertainment, at least to an extent. I mean, when you watch a video, it's more entertaining to see people get pwned than it is just to have someone talking rationally about why something is wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we should be under any illusion that Thunderfoot doesn't do his videos as entertainment, at least a secondary sort of purpose. I mean, they are entertaining, and part of that means being confrontational and intolerant of people that don't understand why he's right.
Well, yeah, I think as I said, the real reason is because it is more personal to him. I think he feels as if it's a betrayal of the entire community which he has been involved with from the start. In a sense, it's more personal to him than fundamentalists who are being idiots, because he basically was part of this community from the start online, and he sees it going in a really bad direction with this crap, and I think that to him is a much more, it's a deeper wound in a sense. It's a much more personal thing. So that's why I think he reacts. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I read his character and his reaction. Um, and I doubt. I mean, I doubt anybody
I
could
don't
really.
disagree with him. I mean, I never disagree with anything he says. I mean, for the most part, I can't really think of anything. I mean, I remember at one point I didn't understand an analogy. I think I asked him to clarify an analogy one time on one of those hangouts on the Sandwich Show. But I mean, he clarified that for me, and I understood it better. And there's not really anything that I disagree with. But again, it was just sort of, I suppose, yeah. I forget that he's got to, I don't know, be in some ways sort of what he's marketing. Well, not marketing. I mean, it makes it sound like he's fake, but I'm not saying he's fake. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, frankly, there's so many problems that arose with this stuff that as everyone knows, the worst wars are entering the scene. The civil wars, and this is a civil war in atheism, and it hasn't been a pretty one. You've had people, who were really good friends. I mean, Thunderfoot was really good friends with some of these people for a while, and a lot of people who also were really good friends with some of these people probably felt very betrayed on both sides. I'm not saying just on one side. Okay, even though I think one side is clearly wrong, but I think that there are many people on their side who also felt betrayed by the actions of Thunderclub. Not that I think that this is, right, but I think that their feelings are genuine. So I understand where all this bad sentiment is coming from. People who they thought they could count on suddenly turned out to be people that they don't know, in a sense, and are going against their principles on either side. Now,
Sure.
again, I think one side is right and I think one side is wrong, but it doesn't negate the fact that you do have people on either side who feel this way. So that's why it is so divisive in a way that we haven't seen before. You know, and I think that's, I mean, you had Richard Dawkins and P.Z. Myers who respected each other in a sense, and they used to riff off each other a little bit, and then suddenly they're complete opposite camps, you know. So yeah, and I think it pretty much exposed a lot of the dogmatism on one side of this community in regards to social policy and other things, which some of us have been following them on for quite a while when it came to things like Islam, but nobody really was going to acknowledge it openly and say that they agreed. And now it's a lot of that stuff, including some attitudes about Islam, have come to the surface, and I think that's part of the reaction, the reason you're getting that kind of a reaction, frankly. Yeah. So there. Now I said my piece. Yeah.
All right, I apologize because we weren't going to talk about it. So do you want to move on to what you're
Well,
going to talk about?
I barely commented on this. Overall, you guys have been going on for a while, and I just nodding my head. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a problem. I don't think too worried about, I don't know, community like values and views. I mean, people throw out their ideas, and the best ideas should come to fruition if we just argue against each other all the time. I mean,
I think as you put it, or I can't remember who put it, but atheism plus, yeah, it's kind of it's a offshoot, small, insignificant.
It's like star signs in the paper,
Yeah, at this point it is. at this point.
Isn't that why they invited Thunderfoot to Freethought blogs in the first place, to try and...
Thunderfoot talked about that in his latest episode, where he was invited on by the drunken peasants or whatever it is. He was just on with G-Man, and he talked about that before G-Man got on. Why he talked about what happened, why they invited him, etc. For about 30 minutes, he went into it, and it was very interesting. One of the reasons that they invited him was because apparently they thought that video was kind of the way to go, and they were trying to invite some people, who were on YouTube, to sort of contribute to the blog, because their blog is basically words, which I understand. That is what they do, and a lot of the medium has moved over from words to video, and people on free thought blogs aren't really video people, except for a select few people. So they tried to recruit him and apparently 3 others or something like that for that reason. And they sort of didn't know, they didn't realize what they were getting into, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Can't believe some of the things that just made me think of some of the who's that lady? There's a lady who does feminism tropes in video games, and
it's
just really horrible. They're just really horrible. But it's like she gets so much funding. If there was ever a concern about, I mean, look how much money we can waste on all this stupid shit on Kickstarter.
And the funny thing,
worse stuff and more money in other things too.
Of course, one of Thunderfoot's most recent videos was that thing about solar roadways, which received a record amount of crowdfunding. I think it was like nearly $2 million or something for this solar roadways project.
Yeah, I'd like to point out about the video games thing. This is really interesting. I don't play many. I play 2 games: Skyrim and Minecraft. Okay, if you watch some of the Let's Plays on Skyrim, because a lot of people who play Skyrim are modders. Okay, so they use mods where you get like sexy armor and stuff like that. But a lot of the people who do play Skyrim are girls or women. And the funny thing is, some of those, or quite a large number of those Let's Play from women, they're wearing sexy clothing and sexy armor where they wouldn't have to. They purposefully mod to get that. I mean, they don't say it, but it's obvious.
I mean, that's like saying women were, that's like saying women feel they need to wear. Look, they're choosing to wear makeup.
No, but this is a video game. This is a video game. Okay, this is a video game where the default armor is not sexy.
It doesn't matter. But that's.
But they feel. Okay, so whether or not they feel it, but they apparently don't see much of a problem with it. There are some that.
Okay. What? Oh, so were the Skyrim mods copping flack?
No. I mean, some of them even make the. No, but this is just a general something I've noticed in that community, and it kind of amused me because there are some fantastic women players out there. I mean, really, really good ones, who make themselves up like baby dolls in a sense, and they kind of enjoy being a quote unquote girl kicking ass type of thing, which I think is really cool in a sense. They're expressing they're being all the girl they want to be, and they're still having fun in a quote unquote man's world, even though it isn't really a man's world.
Of course, some of the male players would you choose a female avatar. I mean,
well, I'm playing one right now, but most of my avatars are male actually. But I have a thief that's a female, and I made her small because she's really sneaky. It's kind of fun. But I have I have an orc and stuff like that, a guy, It depends on the character, but to me that's irrelevant. But the point that I've noticed is that a lot of the girls that are playing, or a lot of the women that are playing, they don't seem to feel offended by wearing sexy clothing or making themselves up with all sorts of makeup mods, etc. And I think that's fine if that's what that. And again, nobody you actually have to go out of your way to mod something like Skyrim. I mean, it's not complicated; it's pretty easy to do, but you have to go search for it, and then you have to download it and, and activate it, and then it's a process. So they're obviously doing on purpose. Now, whether you think that's because they feel a need to by society or not, I would disagree though, because most of the time they were playing when they started out, they were playing alone and not in view of everybody else.
I don't think that's ever portrayed as a problem, like a girl kicking ass, like being able to play a girl, and whether she's just.
No. You have, yeah. No.
I think you're
What's her
morphing
name?
to.
Anita Sarkey, whatever her name is.
Actually, the best example of what the problem seems to be is do every one of you know the game called Dragon's Dogma?
No, I don't.
All right, but because recently there were a case about this in the gaming industry. It was, of course, it's a Japanese game, of course. Where there were these women who were, let's just say, very out of proportion. Yeah. And then they claimed they were sexualized. But the problem also were that some gamers used the argument, well, the male characters are also out of proportion. They are far too masculine, or something like that. So sometimes it goes both ways, but that's the gaming industry. They work in stereotypes because it's fantasies.
They're just selling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's fantasy, and they're just after selling. I mean, that's what.
But that's why they always operate in stereotypes. We see it in movies as well. We always have stereotypes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we like. That doesn't mean we like it or something or endorse it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think one of my friends said to me, that you should be able to mention you should be able to mention tropes, that exist perhaps, within a particular game or movie or whatever. But I mean, there's tropes for, there's tropes of everything, like tropes of, masculinity, all sorts of themes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not saying that there isn't. That this.
I wasn't arguing against you there.
I'm not. I'm saying it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. And let's be honest. For a long time, it is true that computer games were completely male dominated. I mean, it's only recently, the last 10 years, really, that you have gotten women gamers that are in a sense equal or their male counterparts. In fact, you have now entire leagues of women who win championships against it's an equalizer in a sense, but for a long time it was completely male dominated. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I remember, the only people playing Atari and then Donkey Kong and stuff mostly were guys, and most people who played computer games and most people who went into computer programming were guys. I mean, it's indisputable that it was a completely male dominated thing. And it's only the last 10 years or so that has changed, and it has changed very quickly. But even now, there are still sort of disparities in some senses between what a lot of older women will play as games as opposed to older men. It doesn't exist so much with the younger generation, but with the older generation, there is a disparity in the choice of games as opposed to just whether or not they're playing. So that is also an interesting thing to notice. But the younger generations will be playing the same games. As I said, a ton of girls play Skyrim. I mean, that's a it's a violent fantasy RPG, and it's all about
the most popular games. Yeah, the most popular games. Yeah, I mean, the most popular games for whatever reason, it ends up being they're going to be played the most, the more popular ones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
some themes. Yeah, there's a lot of themes of games that try to not have violence and not have any sort of
Yeah.
sexuality or depictions of gender or anything, and some of those ideas don't fly. I mean, there are examples of games like, I suppose, Portal.
Yeah,
Portal's got
Portal was a
violence. I think Portal's no violence. No.
no, Portal was
Yeah.
a huge game with women actually, with girls in fact.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
But I mean,
that
that's like one of the only examples of something that. I
that
mean,
wasn't
everything else has got
yeah.
to touch on some sort of theme of something, because it's got to involve a character and to personalize with, and yeah, I mean,
That's the
you're gonna come across things.
Yeah.
vast majority of games involve humans, don't they? I mean, there aren't that many games
Yeah.
that involve non-human entities, just in general.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well,
Absolutely.
And
one
even
about this,
the non-human entities are personified a lot of the time. Like the little robot chick in Halo and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most popular games for a while was Farmville, and it was because it was played by middle-aged women at home, or older women at home. No, it's true. It's absolutely true. It
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
huge
yeah.
success,
Oh,
and,
no,
and,
no.
and grandma was playing it. So it's not that they haven't learned to play games and become part of a gaming community. It's just that the choice of games for older women at that point was is very different from younger girls and young women, because they obviously grew up in a much different society, and they grew up to I guess, like different things than what men, like, etc. And you don't see that much of a difference with the younger generation.
Yeah.
There's no dividing line in that respect.
well, one
Mm.
thing about this Anita Sarkeesian thing that I don't get is, I don't know how much she received. Was it something like, was it 50 grand or was it 150 grand?
I don't
Yeah, and
remember
she
yet.
didn't even. She did
Yeah.
hardly anything. And where did the money go? Is that what you're getting onto? Sorry, I
Well,
was keep
not
cutting
quite.
you off.
My question is, not quite. What I'm suggesting is that, I mean, I heard that Smosh, which is a popular YouTube channel, I mean, it's a love-hate thing. A lot of people don't like it, but they got crowdfunding to make their phone. I think it was a phone game or something. But what I'm asking is, with that sort of money, I mean, she hasn't really done anything with it. But why couldn't she make her own game that fulfilled all the things that she wanted, and then show how successful it would be, or something like that? I mean, surely that would have been the obvious thing to do with all this amount of money.
Oh no, she can explain why that wouldn't be successful. I mean, of course that wouldn't be successful, because the majority of people in society are
It's the
led to
patriarchy.
led to believe that Mario is the way of to treat women as all princesses. So there you go, Quantum. She wouldn't waste the funds on that. She'd rather educate and hopefully change the industry.
So
Yeah, it's not
is
going
it
to
sort of
happen.
the case that she's going down the no lose scenario? I mean, if you don't take it's sort of, if you don't take risks, then there's no payoff, and so she's going down a route where she can continue to promote herself, but doesn't have to take the risk of paying someone to design a game that might be a complete flop. I mean,
Of course. She's not investing in any game. She's not even prepared to. I mean, all she's doing. It's bizarre. She said, "I'm going to point out tropes in video games." So all that is I'm going to point out particular themes in video games. I mean, you could phrase it like that. And she just tied it with the word feminism, and she's gotten a whole bunch of people who are just probably not even fully aware of what a trope is, probably. Just paying money towards this thing because they support the concept of feminism, which is why it's frustrating when someone like that wants to hijack the word, because, yeah.
Well, um, I think she's behind the times. I think that's what it amounts to. Is she's coming at this. Had she been around, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, she may have had a point. I think now it's completely different. One of the channels I subscribe to, an offshoot of the Young Turks, is, I think, Nerd Alert or something like that. And the main the main host of the show is a girl, very attractive girl, I might add, and she's a huge gamer. huge. Okay.
There's also the types of games that different people like engage
Yeah, but no,
with.
but I believe she plays like all of
Oh,
them.
yeah.
You know, like
All of them.
not only like all
Yeah.
the classic Mario stuff, but like Skyrim and Dragon
Yeah,
Age and
yeah,
whatever. And
Oh,
and so she obviously, you know, is not. I don't think she feels discriminated against. Maybe she has some opinions on it, but I've never heard her bitch about this. And she's a wonderful host. She's really, you know, she's very interesting. She's funny. And
Sorry, is this Anna Kasparian?
no. It's really it's an offshoot of no. Anna doesn't play games. I don't think. Or
sorry.
maybe she does,
Anna.
but
No.
yeah, I don't
I
think
got
Anna
confused.
does.
Not Anita. I mean.
No,
I thought you
Anna
meant Anita.
Kasparian.
Yeah.
No,
Nah,
Anna.
not Anna Kasparian.
No. It's I forgot her name, but you can look it up. It's
She's
called
the
Nerd
young
Alert.
news.
It's called
isn't
Nerd
she?
Alert, and I think it's an offshoot.
Oh,
of the
she's
Nerd.
from the Young Turks Network as well.
Yes.
That's the girl you're referring to. Yeah.
No, it isn't Anna.
Sorry.
Are you sure it isn't Anna? Because she's.
No,
No,
I know
it's not Anna herself. There's another girl, and she hasn't been around the traps. I don't watch a lot of it. I mean, there's a number of them that annoy me, but panelists, Cenk included, a lot of the time. But I keep tabs on some of the things that are on there. There's another girl, and she hasn't been on the channels much.
No, but I don't think she's. I think she's.
She did a Nerd Alert
once.
She did do a Nerd Alert thing.
Yeah, no, I think she's been on the Young Turks once, but the host is like.
There's like spin-off channels though. Like I think, like she's been affiliated with TYT University.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So, but yeah, you're right. I think she's only very rarely been on the main show. But that's not Anna though. Yeah, I don't know her name though.
Yeah, I forgot her name, but I do watch her. I don't watch every episode. I mean, I don't watch every episode of Young Turks either. But you know, I find her show to be genial, frankly. And she has a guy co-host on there, and they're great. They're great together. But she's the main host. She knows her games. She knows her computer stuff, etc. She absolutely does. And I've never heard anybody accuse her of being ditz or whatever, just there because she's cute or whatever. No, she knows her stuff, and I think she knows that she knows her stuff, and will not take any crap from anybody.
She just goes about talking about the games and reviews the games for what they are, and if they're a good game or if they're a shit game.
Yeah. Or stuff in game news or computer news, etc. So I think had Anita been around, 15 years ago, she may have had a point. I think now it's kind of moot. That's why really, I just don't want to give her the time of day because I think she's just past it.
I mean, a lot of these people would have been quite good as suffragettes, maybe.
As what?
As suffragettes.
Oh yeah. I agree. Again, I'm not saying that these disparities and these tropes weren't far more apparent in the past. They were, but I think, frankly, that time is pretty much come and gone at this point. And it's not that there isn't room for improvement, but I think it's clear that the direction is going that the gaming industry realizes. I mean, they're not idiots. They realize 50%.
There's money to be made. Oh yeah.
They realize 50% of their revenue is coming from women, but they're not. They're not stupid. They're not going to go around like insulting half of their paying population. They don't.
It's almost free market research. It's almost free market research when a group of people jump up and down and go, "Hey, where are our games?" And then it just takes a few years for a company to go, "Yep, all right, then we're coming in here, and here's our plan, and give me all your money."
Yeah. No, I mean, but
and they didn't have to pay a cent for the market research.
Well, let's face it. More and more girls are going into computer programming. More and more girls are going into game design. Some of the very famous game designers are women now. Okay, so it's not a wholly
exposed to it at such a young age now.
Yeah, it's not a wholly. Again, I'm not a huge gamer, but I do know something about it. And it does it and as I said, having gamed on and off since the 1980s, I think I have something to say about it, about how it's changed. You know. So yeah, it's a totally different attitude. That's why I think that people who go on about that, the Neva Sarkeesians are just, they're past it. They've missed their time in a sense.
I mean, I would say I used to be a gamer, but not for an awful long time because I guess I was a gamer in the 90s, even though I was quite a young child back then. But the sort of games that were on offer in the 90s were extremely rudimentary compared to the stuff that you would get today. I mean, in the 80s, basically all you had was Pong and Pac-Man, that sort of thing. But in the 90s, you would get 3D games, but they would all be single player. And I mean, what would happen sometimes is that you'd have two controllers and you'd play at someone else's house, and you'd play a sort of cooperative style game. But but there was very little sort of there was no sort of massive online type sort of Call of Duty type stuff. Although what people used to do is they used to have LAN parties and that sort of thing, which people don't really do anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Well, there's no real need anymore. That's one reason. Because back then you had much slower connection rates than you do now. That's one thing. But yeah, I mean I remember the games in the 80s and the 90s, and they were vastly different, and the social culture was vastly different. And frankly, people who played games were mostly social outcasts. Let's not forget. I mean, a lot of gamers back then were not highly regarded. It was seen as a geek thing to do by a lot of people.
Especially if you played Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I mean, I played Dungeons and Dragons, and
you were a witch. People would have said that.
Yeah, I know. I played it in the early 80s, in 1980. When all the fundamentalists were going crazy about witchcraft, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. I was 10 years old.
Have you seen the movie with Tom Hanks?
No. Which one?
You should definitely watch it.
Which movie?
It's called Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh no, I haven't seen that.
It's a political movie made by some fundamentalist about the dangers of playing a Dungeons and Dragons. It's hilarious.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean,
well,
Dungeons and Dragons is not an online game, though, is it? It's a board game.
No, it's not a board game. It's an RPG.
It's the nerd culture about it.
It's the granddaddy of all RPGs. It's the granddaddy.
It's not actually an online game.
No. Although actually, no, they do have an online game now. I think it's free. I'm not certain, but I think they have an MMO now, I think. But it's a tabletop game.
If we're talking more generally, then I mean, when I was at school, when I was younger, the big thing was the trading card games. I mean, the biggest one, of course, was Pokemon, but you also had Yu-Gi-Oh. I think you even had Digimon back then. I think we have. Also, there's Magic, and there's, I think there was even Lord of the Rings at one point.
Yeah, I never got into those. I never was a card game player. That was a bit after my time. But again, very few girls played this, except for Pokemon. Pokemon kind of was a breakaway. But very few girls played Magic the Gathering and stuff. That was mostly guys. It was truly a very male-dominated culture, for sure. I mean, if you walked into a gaming store in the 1980s and 1990s, the chances of you seeing a girl there were absolutely minimal to non-existent. Okay, it's not that there weren't women players; there were, but they were very, very rare. I mean, we just have to acknowledge that. That's the truth. So it's not as if there wasn't a point to be made about it back then. There was, but again, it's a different world today.
One thing that I don't understand, I mean, is that in terms of things like games, I mean, how are you supposed to so easily say that the disparity is due to sexism and not just to different lifestyle choices.
I think no. I think that there was it was in part due to sexism, but not directly because of the games themselves. Not necessarily. Um, the sexism involved, um, in a sense, society telling girls what they, should be focusing on. Okay, and let's face it. I mean, girls were told that you shouldn't be doing certain things, and at the same time they were telling guys you shouldn't be doing certain things. It's not that it was a one-way thing. I mean, it was guys weren't supposed to do certain things or behave in a certain way, and girls, equally, girls weren't supposed to do or be interested in certain things or behave a certain way. So I think that is, in a sense, why you get older women now who are playing games, playing very different kind of games than younger girls are. Younger girls are playing the same games that younger guys are, because we don't teach that sort of mentality anymore. But those older women grew up with that differentiation. And so they never took an interest, let's say, in a Dungeons and Dragons type of thing. And so to them, playing Bejeweled is what they want to do, or Farmville, or whatever. And not that that's all they play, but you know what I'm saying. So there's a difference, and you can see that in the games that they choose due to the culture they grew up in. Today, again, I argue it is a non sequitur. It's just not an issue anymore. I think.
I mean, just in general. I mean, I guess I'm talking from the point of view of today. I mean, there are still disparities that exist, but I mean, what's quite difficult to know is it's difficult to tell whether the distal cause of such a disparity is due to something like discrimination or some other variable, or indeed a combination of the two. I mean, for instance, ever since I began doing this show type thing, the vast majority of people that have joined have been male. I mean, of course, there's 4 of us today, and we're all male. And we have had some women that have joined this show, but I think they've been in the minority. I mean, clearly that's not sexism on my part. But
No. I think it's societal.
But yeah, but I mean, that's what I was going to say. You could still argue that there is some sexism there, but how would you be able to tell whether that was actually the case, or whether it was the case that it's just a different lifestyle choice, or whatever, or something?
Oh, well, I was just going to answer. I think that when you say it's a different lifestyle choice, I think that's got to do with society entirely. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, but I mean, we know there are differences between men and women. I mean, psychologically speaking. I mean,
sure.
I'm not saying that there's no such thing as societal pressures. I mean, of course there are. I mean, that's the whole basis of what culture is. Even between countries, there are different cultures. But of course, there are psychological differences between men and women. And I'm not saying that these are even that well understood. But how would you be able to tell the difference between between a lifestyle choice that is perhaps due to something psychological or innate, rather than something that's due to the sociology of the environment? I reckon it'd be very, very difficult to be able to even distinguish these variables. I mean, they may even couple together so that you might get a combination of the two.
To answer you, I don't know. But I think that if you look at younger girls and younger guys, the differences in their choices are extremely minor at this point. It is true that women in science and technology and engineering and math are still underrepresented, but I think that is really changing. Just as their choice in games and their choice in music and their choice in interests, etc., it is really changing very rapidly, and I don't think that you know, given a completely equal society on every single level, I think that the differences would be extremely minor.
Actually,
And
we are actually beginning to see some differences in the gender roles, especially in science. For example, a lot of mathematicians nowadays are actually mostly dominated by women. Actually,
I don't know if that's true worldwide,
well,
but yeah.
well, it is, and chemistry. A lot of women tend to be into chemistry and
Yes, yes, a lot of
biology.
women, yeah, have gone into chemistry,
And it is
more and
partially
more.
because of PSI or something like that, I think.
Yeah, you know, to say that it is still a sexist society in that respect, I think is just wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that society in America, society in Europe is completely. I mean, I think Europe is far more egalitarian overall, but I don't think that society in America is a fundamentally more sexist society in a lot of respects. I mean, there are some things that we as Americans have to work out, but I think overall the direction, the trend is clear. And I think
In the
people
youth sort of thing,
huh?
within the younger generation coming
Yeah,
through. You mean?
absolutely. I mean, it's the
I
whole
feel that
thing.
way. I feel that way here too.
Yeah, no, I mean, the whole thing about gay marriage, for instance. The younger generation, to them, it's
It's like
not even
unanimous
it's
almost. It's
it's
almost
not.
unanimous.
Yeah, it's not even an
If
issue
you
to
take
them.
the
It's
polls,
like
under
they're
25 in this country, yeah, it's
yeah,
like
they're
90 something
yeah,
percent. It's like 94% or something. If
yeah,
you poll people under like 25 and under in Australia,
yeah,
it's probably similar in the US, probably. And
yeah. I mean,
But I mean, one thing about this is that, I mean, for instance, when positive affirmation is used, I mean, the one thing that I haven't really seen been done on a big scale is some sort of massive blinding trial. So this would be how my thought experiment sort of goes. If you have a job interview, it might not be a job interview, it might be even a university application to a particular university. You don't name the person, you don't tell them their age, you don't say anything else about them other than the purely relevant, their qualifications.
yeah.
I guess you might be able to tell their age from that.
You
But
wouldn't even need their name. You shouldn't even need a person's. I mean, in a sense, I mean, you need to identify which CV or resume is for
well, you
who.
wouldn't,
But I mean, even a name gives away because, I
well,
mean,
you wouldn't use a name. What you would do is, I mean, because
yeah,
this is done in GCSE
double blind, yeah.
exams and indeed in university exams. They start well, especially in university exams, they do this. What you would do is you'd have your CV, which would be named, so you put your name on the CV. You'd send your CV off, and it goes to a piece of software that looks at the name, assigns an anonymous identifier to it that the person on the other end doesn't see, and then it sends it to the employer. All the employer will see will be the anonymous ident. So they take the CV, they say yes or no, whatever, send it back. The software, I mean, it's basically encryption and decryption in a way. They will look at the anonymous ident and decrypt it and turn it back into the name, and then the person at the other end will see whether they've been successful or not. So the employer or the admissions tutor or whatever, all they would know would be the relevant bits of the CV, and this would be, I think, particularly useful for people that have mobility issues, like perhaps in a wheelchair, because I guess if you're an employer and you're not wheelchair accessible, which would be the case, if you employ someone that's in a wheelchair, you're going to have to pay an awful lot of.
Yeah.
You're going to have to put all these things in places, and whether or not that's discrimination, which of course it is, the person is still not. I mean, even if they're getting the best person, they're still going to have to pay. It could be $100,000, it could be $1 million to comply with the requirements. So the only real way. So of course, positive affirmation doesn't work like that, because you can of course, the employer could blame it on something else, which of course I suspect many of them already do. So the only way to solve something like that is by removing the discriminatory brain in the first place and use a computer. I don't understand. I mean, as far as I can tell, I've looked through the literature. No one's ever done this on a large scale. It's been done on a small scale, but it's never been done on a large scale. And I really wonder why.
Just a question. How long have we been going on for?
Sounds interesting.
I'm planning to sort of close up in about 10 minutes.
No, I'm just curious. I'm still up for a little bit. I was just wondering how long I've actually been up here.
We've been going about
nearly 3 hours.
Are
yeah.
you serious? Wow. Okay.
I think Google Plus doesn't let you go beyond. I don't know. Is it 3 hours? I don't think Google.
They extended it. I was pretty sure they extended it. It was originally 4 hours, I think, but I have a funny
No,
feeling.
I don't have a problem with going on longer. I was just curious because it's late here, so I was just wondering how the hell how long how have I missed all this time? So yeah, I was just curious about.
Isn't it in the morning at you, Mordred?
Yeah.
Yeah. Funnily enough, though, I'm in the position similar to you guys. I mean, I worked before I came on here. Like, I finished work an hour before you guys started. I do late shifts.
Well, I know Quantum is 1 hour before before our time here. I think, isn't it about 22 or something?
Yeah, for me it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning.
Well, it's 11 o'clock in the.
Yeah, I thought that you're 1 hour.
Yeah.
It's 13 minutes to 8 a.m. here.
Well, of course, the irony in all of this is because this show was intended to be for the people that enjoyed the Magic Sandwich show. Of course, I've assumed the same timings as what they've done to keep it all consistent. But of course, the Magic Sandwich show timings favours a largely American audience, and no one here is from America. So the irony is, we're doing a show at a time that is bad for basically everyone on here.
Yeah.
So I guess that's.
Oh no, I don't mind this time. I mean, I'm up late usually after work doing a late shift, so I mean, and I don't have to work tonight, so this is why I'm usually on here, and I'm usually listening to the Magic Sandwich show. So yeah, doesn't bother me. I mean, I'm not concerned about when you do it.
Yeah, I have sometimes trouble like getting on the Magic Sandwich show just because I'm just too tired, and I know it's going to be going on for a long time, and but it is kind of fun to go on the Magic Sandwich show.
Of course, you went blocked, and that was a real hassle because I was blocked from the Magic Sandwich show.
Where?
Well,
DPR was like in a zombified sleep state, and he was trying to remove people from the conversation.
No, it wasn't DPR's fault. It was my fault. It was I somehow I got blocked. I think it was I'm pretty sure it was accidental. It wasn't DPR's fault. But of course the trouble is that if you block someone instead of kick them, which I'm sure was the intention, it's extremely difficult to unblock someone. I mean, the account that I used on the Magic Sandwich show is actually still blocked.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's a real problem.
Am I the only one who haven't called in?
I think so. Well, I've called in before. I think both of these two have. So yeah.
I've called in like 5 times now or something.
I have thought about doing it, but I can't get myself doing it because I'm too nervous or starstruck.
I don't know.
Nikolai, you're so much more. I like talking to you. I mean, you'd straighten a few of them out, I think.
But I think, yeah, first of all, I think you should. And second of all, I don't know why I actually went on the first time. I don't remember what my motivation was, why I decided. That was the first time I ever appeared online in any of these discussions.
Yeah, I think that was
the first one. And you and Quantum, you were the one on the same time as I was on my first show.
Yeah. I mean,
do you know what got me into this whole community, or even got me to find like any sort of hangouts or the Magic Sandwich show? It was the Atheist Experience, and I was like, it'd be so cool if I could actually call in and talk to these people, but I can't because it's an American cable access show. And then Aaron Ra was on there, and he mentioned Magic Sandwich show, and I happened to check it out, and I was like, oh, it's done through Skype. This is brilliant. And
Yeah,
then I
I don't
realized there
remember.
was so much
Yeah,
of this stuff everywhere. And
I
then I
don't
just wasn't
remember
aware.
why. I think that might have been my experience too. I don't remember exactly, but I think you're right, and that was also probably my experience uh, through the atheist. Because I've been watching Atheist Experience for like 3 years or something, and I have literally seen every episode, and some of them several times. Um, so yeah, maybe that was it. You just reminded me that that's possibly why.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a combination of just links and ties between Aaron and yeah, his stuff and
I
DPR
guess,
and then
I guess, I guess with me it was rather different because I used to be a frequenter of. Do you know a YouTuber called Shock of God?
Of
Chris,
course, yeah,
oh yeah,
yeah. Well, he had a chat room. Oh god, this I always tell this story. I think it bores a lot of people, but he had a chat room, and I used to frequent that chat room. I mean, I think I was the main atheist there. I mean, there were a few others. Um, I think perhaps more famous YouTubers certainly than me. But anyway, I think I was the main atheist there in the later years. I mean, I did actually debate Shock once. You couldn't really call it a debate, but anyway, and I mean Netflix was there as well sometimes. Yeah, it was pretty bad. But I got friends with some of Shock of God's moderators who were all Christian, and I had several debates there, and I would come in with a few other atheists, and we would do debates, and it was good. Until I mean, the reason that I stopped doing that was because Shock sort of cracked down on the moderation because I was quite liked there. So some of the moderators actually made me a moderator at some times, and this sort of thing Shock wasn't liking, so he sort of made it more like a theocracy. And so in response, I made my own chat room, sort of like a mirror of Shock of God's chat room, and tried to get everyone to go there. And it had mixed consequences because some did go there, and I ended up actually having about 10 creationist moderators in my own chat room. And what happened was that I managed to divide the traffic roughly equally between these two chat rooms, so that a load went to my chat room and some stayed in Shock's chat room. And what happened is that there was not enough traffic to keep either one going. So accidentally, over the course of about 6 months, I essentially destroyed the traffic to both places, and no one went there anymore. So of course, I came off Shock of God's chat room looking for somewhere else to go, and I already knew that the Magic Sandwich Show existed, but I didn't want to go on it because it was more intimidating. But I guess that's roughly the story about it.
Well, I didn't think that was boring. That was very interesting. I didn't know that Shock of God had a chat room. Was this on the IRC or something?
It was like a mic. It was a mic chat room. You would. I mean, the moderators had all the features. You would go in and then you could request the mic. When the mic button came up, you could click it, and you could have debates. I mean, I've debated. Well, I debated Shock of God once. It wasn't a debate. He actually promised to make a video about me, which never showed up, which I was a bit disappointed about, actually.
And of course he never did it.
Yeah, he did it. I mean, I would have quite liked the publicity, actually, but really, it never happened. I also debated Nephilim 3. I think I debated Nephilim 3 twice.
That's not a debate.
No, it wasn't.
Seriously not a debate. It's just a conversation with a mental patient.
Yeah.
I mean, of course.
Seriously, I will call bullshit on him. I have no respect for him. None at all.
He wouldn't. I mean, I had to basically, when I was in there with someone like Nephilim 3, I basically had to concede any sort of aggressive intentions that I had. He actually called me refreshing because I was tiptoeing around him so much, desperately trying not to offend them. Because of course that's what you had to do, because he would just ban you if you didn't do that.
Have you seen the video with King Crocodile where he was debating him?
No, I haven't seen that. I love King Crocodile, but I haven't seen
You should see it because it's him debating him, and while the video goes on, he has written comments down after the video where he says, for example, Neverland says there has never been such a thing as an intermediate species, and then at the video screen you can see yes there is, and there he lists all the species.
I love King Crocodile's style. I have to say he is definitely one of the best online for sure.
Actually, the guy mentioned She-Man. Is that the guy who pissed off Hogtie at one time?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I remember I saw something. That was the first time I thought really, did Hogtie get mad? I've never seen. I didn't think it was possible for him to get mad.
When was that? I haven't seen that.
It
I
was.
didn't
It
know
was
that even happened.
You know the guy called Raw or something.
I'm
No.
not sure.
No.
There was this one time where G-Man and Raw were on some chat, and I think it was Hogtie was the only atheist there, and then they start talking about being offensive, about saying that people are going to hell and damned, and then Hogtie said something, and then at the end of the sentence, Raw interrupted him and said, "But you're still going to hell." and then Hogtie asked him very seriously, "Are you an idiot?"
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Well, they do believe that. They really do, and that's what blows me away, frankly. I think Hogtie's reaction was perfectly justified and
Yeah, of course. It's like when remember that time on the Lion Ghost show where DPR just freaked out.
That I don't remember.
I knew the guy on the Lion Ghost show. That was it, because he was one of my friends in Chuck and God's chat room, actually, Sir Strife, because and he was one of my moderators in the room that I went on and made, and he made the when I made my chat room, he made the Lion Ghost show as his method of escaping the theocracy of Chuck and God. So.
That was actually the first show I started watching before I came to the Magic Sandwich show.
There you go.
I never watched that, actually.
It's really good, actually.
I've heard of it, but I've never. Yeah. Again, the Magic Sandwich show that I was first on with Quantum Overlord was, I think, his first time too. That was the first time I was on any show involving this community. Period. End of story.
It was also Ozzy's first time, because I remember that.
Yes, I remember, and ever since then I have been friends with Ozzy, that was Ozzy's first time as well. I remember that. Yeah, it was a big show, actually, when you think about it. The only one who hasn't started a show out of that is me. Well, Ozzy doesn't have his own show, but Ozzy's kind of like all shows, all shows converge towards Ozzy type of thing. Because he's so significantly wanted on every single show, I think.
And the coolest thing is that he is willing to join every single show that asks him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think rightly so. He basically has a lot of time on his hands to do it, and so why not? He's read a lot on this subject. He knows a lot about philosophy.
Isn't he a philosopher in real life?
No, he studied philosophy, but it's not what he does. I don't know how open he is with his private life, so I don't want to say anything. But I mean, there's nothing weird about it. It's just But he does have a lot.
Like he is, actually.
Yeah, well, he studied it. He studied it for a while, and I think it shows, obviously. So yeah, he knows what he's talking about. It's great.
And isn't Hogtie a psychologist or?
I don't know what Hogtie is. I know what's his name. What's the other guy on the Magic Sandwich show?
DPR Jones.
No, not DPR. The other guy.
Aaron?
No, not Aaron. The other guy. No, the biologist. Come on.
Oh, Concordance.
Concordance. Yeah, he's a biologist. Yeah.
Yes, he's a molecular biologist.
Yeah, molecular biologist. Yeah.
It's the same thing as me.
I kept wanting to say the dinosaur because he used to have a dinosaur thing. Just for some reason, it's late, But yeah, he's a molecular biologist. So yeah, But I don't know what Hogtie does. I can't remember what he does actually.
I don't think he's.
So I was on the internet the other day, and I had this point of view, and I tried to argue with a. What are you again?
Me?
Yeah. What was it again? What was your
my profession?
Occupation? Yeah, your profession. Yeah.
Molecular
biologist. Molecular biologist.
No, I'm not.
No, it's me.
Oh, you. Yeah, and I tried to argue with a molecular biologist from Denmark, and I thought I was right.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know you're a molecular biologist. Well,
I'm not a
hence,
molecular
no, I know, but him.
biologist.
Hence the avatar, though, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's great that we have actual scientists on the
Well,
panel.
I wouldn't call myself a scientist. I'm only taking a bachelor right now, so I'm
No,
not.
I mean on the Magic Sandwich show.
Oh yeah.
You know, you have Concordance and you have Thunderfoot, who are actual scientists. And Aaron isn't technically a scientist, but you know he studied. Well, no, I mean I guess he is.
Well, wait,
He's
wait.
sort of he's not a paleontologist, is
He
he?
used to be a geoscience major.
Yeah, he used to be a science major. Yeah. So I mean, he definitely knows his classification system. That goes without question that he has the qualifications to talk about classification system in biology and evolution.
And he understands the theory of evolution.
Absolutely. No. I mean, I would never say that he's not qualified. He absolutely is qualified, as I think any scientist in that area would be. I think.
I mean, vis-a-vis qualification, it's a sort of sense that in order to debate a subject, you've sort of got to have the background knowledge. I mean, there is a sense of the fact that it doesn't matter how qualified you are, it's only whether the point is valid or not, and when we're talking about things like arguments from authority. But it is the case that you do need some background knowledge in your arsenal. Now, it's the case that...
It depends what the subject is.
Yeah, indeed.
For example, if I were to lecture you in quantum mechanics, you would pretty much doubt my expertise.
I was about to use that example.
Of course, I mean, at the same time, though, of course, that if you want to debate a pseudoscientist, you can assume that their background knowledge is relatively low. So all you need is some background knowledge in order to be able to refute a pseudoscientist. But then, on the other hand, if you want to, debate a real scientist, you're not really going to have that much luck debating them in their field. I mean, not to say that it's impossible, but it's highly unlikely you're going to make any sort of progress. So with things like the Magic Sandwich show, any sort of discussion and debate is against pseudoscientists, people that get the science wrong. Whereas if you want to actually debate about a peer-reviewed scientific paper, you're going to have some expertise. I mean, okay, it does happen in the case. I mean, the biggest example I can think of is the Andrew Wakefield MMR stuff. It does happen that real scientists make massive mistakes that are complete nonsense. But
yeah,
it's rare that happens in their field. I mean, of course, there are say physicists that believe in God, but of course we're not arguing with them about physics. We're arguing with them about their irrational belief in God.
Right.
But to actually debate a scientist about their profession that they're an expert in, 99% of the time you're going to, as a fact, you're going to make a fool of yourself, and that's not an argument. And that's not an argument from authority, as some people would claim it is.
No, it's an argument from knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. You want to avoid arguing from ignorance, and that's something that I mean, I say this because
it's like debating with a doctor on how to conduct an operation when you're a layman and he's a surgeon.
Yeah, exactly.
Who do you think is going to make the most sense and show the other person that he's a complete and utter fool and an idiot?
I don't know. I've met a lot of medical doctors that were not that smart.
Yeah, when you're talking about cutting open somebody.
I know. I just like to make fun of them a lot.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but it's like my favorite example is you got a bomb to defuse. Who do you turn to? The bomb diffuser, the diffusing expert, or the guy off the street says, no, you know what? He's wrong, and I've read about this, and I know better what to do because my philosophy tells me what to do. Who are you going to put your life in? Whose hands are you going to put your life?
Jesus, of course.
Yeah, of course, of course. So it's just that it's that obvious. It's that painfully obvious when you debate a scientist in their field that on any basic level you're just going to lose. If you take the position that they're wrong.
And it's the same thing, especially we were talking about Nephilim-free. It's just, if you ask Nephilim-free when he talks about evolution, he makes no sense. He doesn't even know what an amino acid is. And if you don't know that, you're not qualified to talk about genetics. I'm sorry, you're not. You need to have the basics down.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, with this sort of thing, what I don't get is that, I mean, I don't think everyone that believes in God is necessarily stupid, but, I mean, in the sense that they might be indoctrinated. But one thing I don't get is when people make, like these 15 questions that evolutionists can't answer, that sort of thing, and they are really basic things like, how come a man has never given birth to an ape? Actually, is it the other way around? I don't know.
No, that's not the most annoying. You know what the most annoying question is?
Well,
the second law of thermodynamics.
Oh yeah, well of course
that is the most annoying one.
that sort of thing. But what I don't get is trying to conceptualize this. If it is the case that the question "Why has a man never given birth to an ape?" is so integral, it's so fundamental that it can tear down our current paradigm of biology and science, then why has no one in the last 200 years ever come up with such a simple idea? Because it's a really simple idea. And if they were to come up with it, of course, they would be celebrated as a Nobel laureate. So how can people like Nephilim 3 sit there and think that no one else has ever come up with such a groundbreaking idea? Of course, there's only basically two solutions to it. They can either admit that they're an idiot, or they go to option 2, which is to accept some sort of global conspiracy that lasts for 200 years. And a lot of people actually go for the conspiracy theory that science oppresses the creationists. Yeah. That's the only way that you can keep it at least minorly consistent. But then you have to ask, what is the probability of an international conspiracy lasting over 200 years? And that no one has ever revealed anything about. And then those odds are just ridiculous.
No, you don't understand, Quantum. It's all about the New World Order and the Zionist Jews who want to rule the world.
Yeah. What are they called? Yeah, what's that group? They control
Illuminati. The Illuminati.
Yeah, the Illuminati, and they have their secret tea parties up on the top of the Juju Mountain, and they're sprinkling their controlling dust through the jet planes of the trails, and they're immunizing our children and making them autistic, and
and they're putting stuff in our drinking water too.
I just have to say about Nephilim 3 is as bad as the other creationists have been. I think he is the most deranged, most psychotically neurotic.
Trust me, I have taken a lot of psychology courses. That man is actually not lying. He really does believe what he says.
No, I agree. I agree. But he is a geocentrist. Geocentrist. That's to me, that's worse than being a creationist. To me, that is absolutely worse than being a creationist. To be a geocentrist, you really have to deny everything since Galileo. Everything in science that we have found out since Galileo, you have to deny to hold that position to be true. And even before then, I mean, the ancient Greeks, themselves have postulated from time to time, that it wasn't necessarily a geocentric, geocentric universe. I don't know. It is so extreme. It is so ridiculous. But what's really concerning is it's a growing phenomenon in the creationist movement. That to me is really scary. Really scary. Because it's one thing not to understand evolution. You have to study a bit. You have to understand a little bit about biology, possibly genetics at this point. You have to understand in various fields how they date things, etc. I can understand not completely grasping that without being told by somebody who summarizes it for you over a certain amount of time. But to be a geocentrist...
With the geocentrism, I mean, it's relatively straightforward to prove it yourself. I mean, I've done it. I mean, I've got a telescope that's, I mean, it's a cheap. It's only like a £50 telescope, but with a very basic piece of kit, you point it at Jupiter, and you can see the 4 main Jovian moons really quite easily. And
absolutely, yeah.
So you
But exactly what do they have to explain? Especially you, Quantum. You know that if you observe Mars over the sky, it will loop back again and forward because it routes around us. How do they explain that?
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
you wouldn't do that. You would do what Galileo did originally. I mean, of course, you can do that, but then you're going to have to understand a little bit about orbital dynamics, which is, I guess, a little bit more daunting. But what the easiest thing to do is just to point your telescope at Jupiter and observe how the moons rotate on Jupiter, and then it comes to the conclusion: well, if the moons are orbiting Jupiter, then they're clearly not orbiting the Earth.
No, but okay, but it's.
But then they will say that Jupiter is still re-rolling about the Earth.
Yeah, but you have to be so deluded to be a geocentrist that you have to believe that everything in science has been faked. The moon landings are fake. Our probes to Mars are fake. The Voyager missions are faked. The missions that landed on Venus are fake. Everything is fake. That you have to believe that to be a geocentrist. You have to believe that. That to me is I think just beyond the delusions of your average creationist. Ironically,
it breaks the fundamental laws of. I mean, it breaks Newtonian mechanics as well. Let's understand that. There's no way that you can get a system, a stable system, with Earth at the centre. If you were to make your own solar system, actually, I think there are simulations on the internet where you can do this.
Yeah.
To make your own solar system, you put a small object at the centre and a big object around the outside, and what happens is it rearranges itself so that the big object is in the middle. I mean, clearly that's exactly what's going to happen.
Well, as Fiona said in her hangout I was in just over a week ago, like it's calculated that for geocentrism to work, something like the Andromeda Galaxy has to circle the sun like 3,000 times the speed of light or something like that. It's just ridiculous. It is such a preposterous thing to believe.
And then that's when you get the people say, but how do you know that the speed of light is constant?
Yeah, that is.
Nephilim 3 thinks that Einstein is wrong.
Yeah, I know that.
And
that's why I think
Craig, where he tries to prove Einstein wrong.
Yeah, and that's why I think he is the most deranged out of all of them that I have seen. I mean, Jason Burns is in a category of his own, granted, but I think Nephilim 3 is so deluded, so painfully deluded, that he just tops out at another level, frankly.
Now, of course, without if this stuff about relativity is of course wrong, which Nephilim 3 believes, one of the implications of that is that magnetic fields won't exist. You can't have magnetic fields without special relativity.
The consequence is that his fucking GPS doesn't work either.
Yeah, that's general relativity.
Integrally on the theory of relativity. You cannot have a GPS system that doesn't take Einstein's equations into account. You can't, because the differential would be too great. So he happily uses GPS, I'm sure, and while denying the very thing that makes it work. That to me is just delusion in the greatest sense of the word.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the fact that magnetic fields don't exist is a little bit more fundamental. I mean, his bloody speedometer wouldn't even work without magnetic fields. I mean, think of all the appliances that we use today that rely on electromagnetic induction, and which
people actually, I'm not surprised. Carry on.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's stunning, but it really is also stunning that it seems to be a growing phenomenon. In the creationist circles, that more and more people are taking this on faith that geocentrism is actually true, and that scientists have been lying all along.
I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this sort of psychic culture sort of thing that's
the New Age
creeping in. Yeah, sort of like New Age stuff, like. like psychic fairs and come and get
Yeah.
just, things taken. It's like, oh God, go away, please.
That to me is just
Yeah, but you gotta remember, not a single
But
one
then
has
again,
completed a James
it's-
Randi challenge yet. Not a
yeah,
single one have
exactly.
completed it.
I know. It's a complete. His series is brilliant. I love it. That television series he did where he just got all
yeah,
these people on, and how he wrecks Uri Geller,
yeah.
or he helps one of the talk show hosts wreck Uri Geller.
Mhm.
And I mean, come on, people. I mean, it's
Yeah, he's
just.
a complete. The guy was a complete fraud. Still is.
And he showed like multiple frauds as well. Well, not
Yeah.
well, basically frauds, or he showed that their um, powers were no better than chance alone
Yeah.
on that television series as well. I
Yeah.
want someone to do a new version of that. I reckon it would do really well, and I reckon it would be really awesome.
Actually,
But
that
no,
reminds me, when you talk about new shows, have any one of you seen the remake of Cosmos?
No, I haven't. I
Cosmos.
wait.
I haven't seen the remake. No.
I purposefully waited until it's over. I'm gonna download it and watch it all at once.
I've heard people sensitive to, I suppose, um, well, to a God view, I suppose, complaining that there's a bit of Seth MacFarlane throughout it, which is sort of an anti-God message, which the original Cosmos supposedly didn't.
No,
Um,
actually not.
I mean,
Actually, they mention religion. They do. Neil doesn't really bash it. Actually, he just mentioned it as a side thing. Actually,
yeah, I
that's
thought I wouldn't. I haven't seen it yet, so I was just sort of asking you. Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
well,
Well,
it's quite good. I think. Of course, it's for lay people. Of course, it's very dumbed down, I would say, but it's still very
Yeah.
atmospheric. It shows science as a cultural thing, and that's what I
I
love about it.
okay. I have to say this. I was a little. It looked really exciting, and I was actually promoting it on G Plus for a while before it came out. I really love Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think he's great. He's a diva. I know he goes on a lot, just like me. Um, but um, but I really appreciate the guy. The problem I have with watching the new one, and I will, but the original Cosmos has a really special place in my heart, in a sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
was
yeah,
10
it's a
years
good.
old. Well, I was 10
Yeah.
years old when it first came out. I just moved to the United States
Ah.
from Europe,
Yeah.
and I watched it with my father on PBS when it first came out,
Nice.
and it was the first quote unquote adult book that he ever gave me. So not only did I watch the show at that age, but I also read the book, and it was literally the thing that opened up my eyes to science. And I was 10. I mean, well, actually, I was 9 at the time when it first started. Um, and so it was a very special thing for me. And then a few years later, I went to see Carl Sagan in New York City talk on New Year's Eve about a
You
nuclear
have seen
winter.
him in real life.
Yeah, I was there. He spoke in a church actually.
That is so cool.
Well, because I was a singer in the children's chorus of the Metropolitan Opera at the time, and Frederica von Stade, who was this famous opera singer, was singing in an opera that I was in, and she was singing at this event. So we got tickets from her. She was very nice. She gave tickets to myself and my family, and we went to see her sing, and then Carl Sagan was there to talk about the danger of nuclear winter. I believe it was the eve of 1983, I think. So it was New Year's Eve, and I saw him speak about it, and we went up to him afterwards, and I said hello. And so Carl Sagan to me is a very special guy, and the Cosmos series and everything surrounding it was a very special time in my life in a sense. So I as much as I was very happy and I absolutely promoted this, word of it, since over a year, I was hesitant. Well, first of all, I don't have a TV since 2001. I gave my TV away. So I had to wait anyway, and I didn't want to download it until it was all over anyway. So I will download it and I will watch it. And
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, I wanted to see it all at once. The thing I had problem with was it was on commercial TV, which I understand reaches many more people, but the original Cosmos was probably a lot longer because they didn't have any commercial interruptions.
Yeah.
I have to keep that in mind, and but I think they probably stayed very true to the original because his wife was involved. So obviously on a very fundamental level. So I think that and Neil deGrasse Tyson was a student of Sagan's. So I really respect where he's coming from, etc. I don't have any problems with him doing it, and I don't have any problems with them remaking it, etc. I'm very glad that they did it. It's just much more of a personal thing for me, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd like to see it. I would like to see it. By the way, where in Australia are you?
Melbourne, Victoria.
All right, yeah, I know where Melbourne is. Yeah.
Me neither.
You've never heard of it?
I do know. No, I do know where it is. Have you read? I've read In a Sunburned Land.
I'm familiar with it.
Bill Bryson. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. It was written 20 years ago, but fantastic book about Australia and the Australian history, etc. But there was also a great series called Down Under, done by what's his name, Tony, the guy who played the guy who does Time Team, Tony, in England, Tony something. He was Baldric. Sure. He was Baldric on Blackadder. Yeah, Tony something. So he did a I think it was a 6-part series. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. Fantastic series about the history of Australia, stuff that I never knew about, and also in the book, Bill Bryson's book, stuff you just never heard about. Fantastic stuff about Australia, and fascinating country. I absolutely love Australia. So yeah, I just was curious where exactly in Australia. Most people don't realize how big Australia is. So,
Yeah, it's like further. I think from. I mean, I haven't. I was also going to mention that I have been nowhere in the world. Like I am a geography like being nowhere. I've gone. The furthest I've been out of Melbourne is to Sydney, and Sydney's only an hour flight away. Yeah. That's the furthest I've been in my life. So, I feel it's interesting talking to. I like talking to people from overseas.
Well, you could go to New Zealand. It's not that far away.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have a problem with the distances or anything like that.
Well, I do. If I were to go to Australia, I would have to fly for 22 hours or something. No way I'm doing that. Yeah. No way.
Yeah.
I've already been to the United States, and that flight took about 12 to 16 hours. So it's horrendous.
So many Aussies do sort of Katiki tours and European tours, and it's like almost a thing that like a really high percentage of young Australians like will save up money and go to Europe. Like I don't know, everyone seems to. I suppose you have to be keen on big flights if you're an Australian and you want to get to anywhere really. I mean, like the US or anywhere in Europe.
It's so far from anywhere, really. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, Bali, Indonesia is the closest sort of, or New Zealand, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it is far. It is very, very far.
Well, I usually say once you've seen one country in the West, you've pretty much seen all of them. I have been to
all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, kinda. Well, not well. In a way, yes, but in a way, no. Well. It depends. I've been in nearly every country in Europe, and I've been to the United States, and I've never really got that pure culture shock. I have this little dream about going to Japan or China.
That's what I'm. That's what I've been.
I've been to Shanghai.
European countries are different. I mean, I haven't been. I mean, I haven't actually even been out of Europe, but I've been to quite a few countries within Europe, and they seem. I mean, even the difference between France and Germany is quite staggering. I mean,
Yeah, in some points I can see, but it's not. There's not that much of a difference to me. I think it's been too westernized. I think it's not exotic enough for me.
I think that's a problem that many Europeans have, actually. I think
even
that's
things like how people drive. I mean, like in France, if you go to Paris, the driving is crazy. People
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
drive like mad, but when you go to Germany, everything is like robotically ordered,
Yeah.
and like
Do you know how fast they can drive at the German highways?
really well on the autobahns. Of course, there's no speed limit, but
Yeah, there's no speed limit. It's insane.
but if you go into like a German town, like the pedestrians like stop at in the UK, everyone ignores the pedestrian lights, but in Germany. I jaywalked in Germany, and like all the Germans were like looking at me like I just murdered someone.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, it's worse in Switzerland. I used to live on the border. I used to live in France, in Albertville, right on the border with Switzerland and Italy. And in Switzerland, going to the airport, because I would have to commute sometimes to other places. It is so that you really have to take care never to breach any law or social etiquette, because people will give you the stare of death. Like you filthy scumbag. You jaywalk. You cut it. You cut in line even though you didn't see a line. I mean, it was anything that you sort of take for granted. They really have these strict rules that they obey and they go by, and you are well beholden never to break them, never.
But of course, you used to be from America. I mean, I heard something about the fact that Americans don't queue. Is that true? Because that seems rather.
No, Americans queue. Chinese never queue. Israelis don't tend to queue, but Americans, no, Americans queue for sure. Yeah. I mean, I grew up there. I can tell you. I've never seen people just like cutting in line. I mean, it happens, but it's not like a normal thing.
Out of interest, I mean, one thing that I've done before is gone on YouTube and looked at American videos about what it's like to live in the UK. And I find that quite interesting to look at it from other people's point of view. What stereotypes do people have about the UK, just out of interest?
Well, I don't, because I grew up in the UK.
Well, then I have something. Well, I have another thing. What is it, the thing that the British people have against the French? What is that?
For the 100 Years' War.
Is that a thing?
It's just I love seeing a lot of British TV shows like QI and everything else, and Monty Python and they always make fun of the French. I don't know why.
I will tell you something. First of all, I caveat. I am French. As I said, I have 3 passports. But when it comes to the British versus the French, I always take the British side. I am more British in most respect than any other nationality, even though I've never had a passport from there. Because my earliest memories in life are from England. For 4 years, I lived in London, in Chiswick. When it comes to French people, it's very interesting. The British take much more of an interest in the French than the French actually do in the British. The French actually don't spend a lot of time thinking about the British. And I don't think that the British really realize this. I mean, they do poke fun sometimes, but it's not in the same vein as the Brits ragging on the French. And I think for good reason, of course, because I'm biased towards the British. But I think it is much more one way than people realize. If you live in France, you rarely hear about English people. It's just not something that they normally talk about. whereas in English humor often makes fun of French people, etc.
From my experience, English people tend to talk more flack about Americans than they do about the French.
Yes, I mean that's a given, but I think that goes for most of the world, frankly, and that also is for good reason. But I mean, when it comes to British-French relations, I think the British take much more of an interest in mocking the French than the French do in mocking the British. It's just not part of the French culture, comedy culture, in the same way that it is in England, part of the English culture.
Well, isn't it because they are a very, I wouldn't say nationalistic, but they are a very proud nation, the French.
Yes and no.
The French like to keep things French. That's how I usually say it.
Yeah, yes and no. It's a bit more complicated than that, and it has drastically changed in the last 20 years with liberalism and with immigration, etc. It has become very, very different, as has the culture, I believe, in England as well. It's not that clear cut. I mean, you have Le Pen winning now in the European Parliament elections, but you also have UKIP winning, etc.
Of course, France just voted for far
I
left.
know Le Pen. Far left. Yeah, Hollande.
Far right. It was
Remember,
far.
Quantum,
Oh,
in French,
yeah.
all letters are silent.
Yeah, no, Le Pen, but it's basically the same reaction to immigration as the Brits had with UKIP. It's no different than that.
I don't think UKIP is as right wing as a lot of people think it is. I'm pretty sure it's not as right wing as the one that the
It isn't. It isn't. But you have to realize something. The difference in politics in France is very different from politics in America and the politics in the UK. UK politics is very different from American politics in many respects, but the French politics is vastly more different than that. And you don't have a party in France like UKIP, which is a bit more centrist but hard on immigration. I mean, okay, I'm not justifying UKIP. I'm not saying that I agree with most of their policies. I don't.
UKIP is not that anti-immigration. I mean, they do have quite strict immigration policies, but they're not
right. Right, but the situation you have in France is you don't have a UKIP. Okay, you have the EDL, and that would be Le Pen, who just won. So people who have a major problem with immigration, had no other recourse than to vote for this party. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's the right solution. The right solution is to form another party. But in France, it is a lot different than the Anglo parliamentary style of government. It is very different in many respects. In France, it is much more of a culture of extremes. Okay, in France, for example, the street, the mob is considered to be a legitimate entity, a legitimate political voice in a sense. That's why when you remember several years ago that the French truckers shut down all the French roadways, and France was losing like billions of dollars a day in economic value because people couldn't move around the country, people couldn't import or export. It was a huge news story for like a month or something. It was crazy. But the police, even though that was a completely illegal action, the police would not go in and arrest these truckers and move them off the road, because in France, putting out your dissent in terms of blocking traffic on the street as part of the mob action is considered a legitimate action, even though it's illegal. It's a completely insane idea, but that's the way they see it. I was there at the time, and I was railing against the system like you wouldn't believe. But they thought I was crazy because they were like, well, no, these people are just expressing themselves. I said, yes, but it's illegal. They said, yeah, but it's just their right to express. I said, it's not a right if it's illegal. They said, well, yeah, it is. It's a fundamental human right. I said, then why is it illegal? Well, that's the law, but in France we have a tradition. Okay, so it is very different. It's a culture in much more extreme in political culture. So you don't have a more centrist party like UKIP, even though some people in England won't consider them centrist, but I do in a sense, in certain respects. And you have a major problem in that respect, that they didn't have anybody else to represent them on the issue of immigration, so they voted for Le Pen. Are you still there? Okay.
I don't really know that much about French politics, so it's always interesting to hear.
Almost nobody does.
Yeah.
Almost nobody outside of France does. It's kind of murky, frankly, to most people who are Anglophiles. They don't understand French politics. We think of it as a homogenous westernized society, and in a sense it is, but in a local political sense it isn't. French politics is very different from English politics.
Isn't the new president, isn't he a socialist?
He is, and he's also probably the worst president they've had in a while now. He's got numbers so bad right now in the polls that the guy he defeated, Sarkozy, is making a comeback. Okay, that is unprecedented in French politics. Period. End of story. Just the fact that people are reconsidering, maybe we shouldn't have voted this guy out of office. Okay, for all the scandals he had, etc. We should have stayed with him. The fact that they're considering this is just mind blowing.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I was in Germany, there was the politics in Germany is also quite interesting because they've got a the German party is called the Christian. I think it's called the
Christian Democrats. Yeah.
Christian Democrats. I don't think it's overly religious though, but
no, it's not.
But when I was in Germany, and it was of course I couldn't vote, but I was in Germany on the day of the election. But what they did was they had like all over the streets there were like political icons. I mean, there were like ribbons over the street, on the street floor, and there were things between the houses, that sort of thing. And it was really interesting because nothing like that ever happened in the UK. And we just go to the polling station and just work like that. I mean, it's nothing really interesting. And of course, you couldn't do it in the UK because it would probably be vandalised. So,
yeah, it's very different in Germany as well. But I mean, it is very hard to understand as an English person or as an American person without having lived in those cultures how politics works in those cultures. It is not a simple thing to understand. I mean, the legislature. Well, Americans, first of all, know nothing about anything outside of their country. They don't even know about what's going on inside their country. So there's that thing. But French Parliament, the French Senate does not work the same way as the English Parliament, for example. The French terms are not the same. The political parties are not the same. The rules are not the same. It's different. It's very different. So you have to really be there for a while to understand what the heck's going on.
Isn't the British system, isn't it constructed? You have, I think it's House of Lords and then House of Commons.
Yeah.
And is it true that you can actually be born into politics if you are a member of, let's say that you are a lord or something?
No. Actually, you have to be indoctrinated in a sense into the House of Lords, even if you have a hereditary title. You have to be accepted into the House of Lords, I believe.
Okay.
It's still a nastily corrupt system. For instance, they have places reserved for.
But still, if you are a noble, you can get into it much easier.
Yeah, but let's be real. The House of Lords doesn't actually do anything constructive.
Well, the thing is though, they do have a role. I mean, it's not like the Queen who literally does hardly anything in terms of political.
Right.
But the House of Lords does have. They can delay legislation, which is significant, really, because if you delay, because they can change the face of laws, and they have done that in the past to affect.
Yes, but it's rare. It's fairly rare that they affect anything coming through the House of Commons.
But of course, in theory, of course, the Queen could have a political impact. I mean, that would,
Right.
and that's
Right.
as far as I can tell, that's never happened since we've had any sort of real.
We want the old empire back.
Well, basically, since I guess since the 1660s or something, that House of Commons, when they finally came into their own, in a sense, after executing the king. So I think
that was Oliver Cromwell, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Of course, the interesting thing was that Oliver Cromwell set himself up as his own dictator. I mean, he called himself the Lord Protector, but he was basically the new monarch. I mean, he set it up so that his son would be the new monarch. And the weird thing, I mean, a lot of people in England celebrate Oliver Cromwell as being a great person, but in fact, he was worse.
I know, he was much worse. He illegalized Christmas. Did you know that? He illegalized Christmas. Because
I knew that he was pretty awful, but I didn't know about that. Oh.
Yeah, he illegalized Christmas. It didn't hold very long, but because they considered it a pagan. I mean, they were Puritans. They considered it a pagan holiday. The whole Christmas tree. Well, it wasn't the trees, but whatever. The whole celebration of it, they considered it to be unchristian in a sense. So they illegalized Christmas, and they closed the stores down, etc. That were selling things for Christmas. It was a disaster. They really were worse than what they got rid of, but because of that, the House of Commons came into its own. Parliament came into its own, in a sense, and ever since then, I believe, the monarchy has never really stepped in again to halt legislation, etc.
I'd be interested to know, as an aside, how Mordred views the Queen, because of course the Queen of England is also the Queen of Australia, because Australia is part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
The Queen's just laughed. The Queen. We have a Governor General. He's elected, but he doesn't even have a seat in Parliament. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a seat in Parliament, and he's just a representative person now, and he used to have to sign off bills. I think he doesn't even have to do that anymore. So he's virtually been reduced to nothing. And so I mean, no one in Australia. I mean, we just all go, thank you very much. It's Queen's birthday. It actually is today. It's a day off, public holiday.
Wow, cool.
For that. But, I mean, we all just go, thank you very much. Let's have a game of football. And
but there was an interesting constitutional crisis. I believe it was the late 60s, where the Governor General opposed, I can't remember what legislation, but it ended up being a constitutional crisis in Australia because he was the Queen's governor, and it was in Australian terms, it was a huge,
power it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way it was written, our Constitution's strange. It has to be interpreted all the time, and it can be amended and things. But anyway, the way it was is, essentially the Governor General was able to basically squash, a bill that had gone all the way through Parliament, essentially. Yeah. But no one had ever, throughout the entire history of the country, no one had ever actually gone through with that. And then this guy, and then I'm pretty sure they change happened. I think it's changed now that can't happen anymore. But yeah,
celebrate the Queen's birthday. We don't do that in the UK.
Well, we don't celebrate, dude. We don't. It's just a public holiday. The government says
we don't get a public holiday. Well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we don't
just
get very many. We don't have very many, so we take what we can get.
it's just an excuse to have another beer and throw some shrimp on the barbie.
Exactly.
I
You
No
find that
shrimps on the
remarkable
Barbie. No shrimps.
that Australia gets a public holiday to celebrate our Queen's birthday, and then we don't even
Hey, it's Queen's birthday. No, I mean, think about it. Think about it. It's kind of just a day off. Who,
Yeah, it's just a day off. That's exactly right. As if you
Yeah.
wouldn't do it, you know.
Did you guys celebrate the royal wedding as well?
Oh, they crap on about it on the news, but I mean, to say that we have an aging population, like I mean, seriously, if you look at our age population, it's quite. There's a lot of old people here, and I think a lot of people still sort of have sort of old emotional ties to the Europe, England and the Queen and the monarchy and Europe, other European countries and things like that. So of that nature. So I think this is sort of like, I don't know, you just sort of it's there, but I mean, it's not very relevant if you look at younger people today.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, Australia is basically completely independent. It's in name only. It's part of the Commonwealth, etc. But
Yeah,
I
it would
mean,
just cost. It's basically one of the reasons why we don't become like independent or whatever is because we'd have to, by our constitution, we'd have to have a referendum, which would cost millions of dollars. Basically,
Yeah.
they always cost millions of dollars, which is basically everyone in the country has to vote, and it would probably get through, and it would just cost us more money, and then we wouldn't get certain privileges like being able to play in the Commonwealth Games, which
yeah.
we enjoy sporting. I mean, all sports. We're sport crazy, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
we
it
still
would
have
be
cultural
pointless.
ties to England, and that it's just it's not relevant in the sense that there's no control. Britain isn't controlling it, so
You
yeah.
might change your opinion after Queen Elizabeth goes, because the one that's coming next.
Oh,
Yeah.
you reckon a bit of a shift?
Her wet son, yeah, God, he's just a disaster waiting to happen. I feel a little bad for
about
him.
the Queen though, because the Queen Elizabeth is great. I mean, she
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really find anything bad to say about her, but
No, Charles is a fucking disaster. But I have a modicum of sympathy for him after I've thought about it for a while, because he's what age now? He's into his 60s, okay, or maybe even close to 70s. Uh, his entire life has been just waiting for his mom to die. Okay, he has been an irrelevance. He can't really work. He can't really have a normal life. All
There's
he can
not.
do
Yeah.
is wait for mom to die. And what kind of a life is that? I just, I do feel a slight
I don't.
sympathy
Yeah.
for him in that respect. I mean, I know he's a complete loser. He's a moron. He said the stupidest things about certain religion, etc. But I do feel ever so slightly sympathetic towards him just on that one point alone, because the guy must have just I mean, he's incredibly wealthy, but he can't really do anything with it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. I don't think now quantum like it really is irrelevant who's the monarchy now to Australia. I mean, there's no. Yeah, it is complete irrelevancy. I don't think it matters. Like even if it was a really sort of, a mad dictator or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What could they do, honestly?
yeah,
They
yeah.
had
Apart
that,
from
as I said, they had
cutting
that
ties
one.
from
Yeah.
Britain's end,
Well, they had that one constitutional
cutting
crisis.
us loose as a republic against our will, perhaps
Yeah.
might be some far-fetched concept, but yeah.
I mean, the Queen is good in the sense that she is on the last defence against a political tyrant, and the only thing that she can do politically is she can abdicate and force her and dissolve Parliament, which I guess she would do in the case that someone was elected and became a dictator, which I suppose there's a remote possibility could happen. And then the Queen could basically stop that from happening in its tracks.
Not if it was FU.
Well,
where there's a will, there's a way, so to speak. But yeah, that's the mechanisms in place for that to be a preventative measure. Yeah.
But no, I actually think that.
Sorry, just before you say anything, I really have to go, but it's been really good.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
Shall we close up now? I mean, shall we close up now anyway?
Yeah, it's.
Oh sure, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's almost 2 a.m. for me. I definitely have to go to sleep now.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So, I'm going to try and do another one in 2 weeks' time, hopefully, on the same topics as the Magic Sandwich Show. And to be clear, it's not going to be how many hours? 4 hours. It won't be 4 hours. It'll be 2 hours.
I quite enjoyed it though.
Yeah, but I've kept it this on just
People
it's the first episode. But
you heard it here, audience. Next time we'll do a 10-hour marathon.
Well, granted, I was playing Skyrim for most of it. I stopped about an hour ago.
That's it.
3 hours I was hacking away at
We need to.
Undead, yeah.
We need to get into the MMO community and get them to come and
this
join the show while they're playing.
This is a solo
yeah.
game, so, but, you know.
Well, I mean, I don't really know how to link to it publicly because all my Google post things are private. So feel free to tell people about it. But like I say, next week I do plan on keeping to the time limit more stringently than I have done this time. But anyway, thanks for coming on. I noticed that we have two people that have been on before, and of course, thanks Nathaniel for coming on. You made a lot of really great contributions.
I honestly don't even remember what I said.
Anyway, I think we're going to go off air now. So thanks everyone, and thanks for people that.
Happy Queen's birthday, everyone.